It's my great pleasure at this time to call to order the regular council meeting of June the 8th, 2021. Just before we start, though, I'd like to take a moment to reflect on the horrific tragedy that was discovered at the residential school in Kamloops and the discovery of 215 children that had died at that facility. And I would like to be able to reflect on that with a moment of silence. So we will observe a moment of silence to honor what happened there and reflect on it. Thank you very much for pausing with me. As always, we are pleased to be here today on the traditional territory of Treaty 6. We acknowledge all those who share a deep connection with this land. The City of Beaumont respects the histories, languages, and cultures of all of Canada's First Peoples, whether they be of First Nation, Métis, or Inuit descent, and appreciates that their presence continues to enrich Canada's vibrant communities. We are all Treaty people. Just before we move forward with the agenda, we have two proclamations this evening. The first proclamation is for National Indigenous Peoples Day on June 21st, 2021. Whereas Beaumont was settled and built on the traditional lands and territories of the First Nations peoples, the homeland of the Métis, and as part of the greater Edmonton area, the region is a place where Inuit and people of the North come to receive services and connect with family, friends, and neighbors. And whereas every summer solstice is a sacred time for Indigenous peoples and communities across Canada to celebrate the ceremony, culture, tradition, and teachings, it marks a time for all people living in Canada to acknowledge the many contributions Indigenous peoples have made and continue to make through knowledge, law, labor, spirituality, technology, science, philosophy, art, health, and wellness. And whereas National Indigenous Peoples Day is an opportunity to acknowledge the trauma that was caused by the attempts to assimilate and colonize the original peoples of this land, while also recognizing the resilience and strength of Indigenous peoples to continue connecting with their culture and heritage despite our dark shared history and the systemic racism that still exists today. And whereas the City of Beaumont is committed as allies to assist Indigenous peoples in reclaiming their culture and traditions while making room for Indigenous voices within our structures and at our decision-making tables to ensure equity and equality for Indigenous peoples going forward. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor John Stewart, do hereby proclaim June 21st, 2021 as National Indigenous Peoples Day in the City of Beaumont, Alberta, dated the 20th day of May, 2021. And as well, I'm happy to proclaim Seniors Week from June 7th to 13th, 2021, from supporting family and friends to volunteering. And whereas the value seniors bring to a community is priceless, as they hold our history, have valuable memories and stories of where we come from and experiences that help us as we look to the future. And whereas this year marks the 32nd anniversary of Seniors Week in Alberta to honor the enormous contributions of seniors in the City of Beaumont, as well as across the province. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Mayor John Stewart, do hereby proclaim June 7th to 13th, 2021 as Seniors Week in the City of Beaumont, Alberta, dated the 7th day of May, 2021. So, adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda? City Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Administration doesn't have any amendments to the agenda at this time.
Thank you very much. Is there a member of council willing to move adoption of the agenda as presented? Councillor Hendricks.
So moved, Your Worship.
Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, all in favor? And that carries unanimously. The consent agenda. You have 5 items, so I move that council consent to approve the following agenda items without debate. Item 5A, the regular council meeting minutes of May 25th, 2021. Item 8D, the interim traffic calming repeal. Item 8E, the draft council governance manual. Item 8F, 2021 council summer meeting schedule. And item 12A, Town of High River proposed Alberta coal restriction policy. For those that are wondering, this is just a quick procedural thing. We forgot to set for information at our last meeting, so that's why that one is back. Discussion on the motion. Is everybody okay with those? Okay, seeing none, call the question. All in favor? And looking for count. There we go. And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Which brings us to the open forum. And I understand we have 2 presenters this evening. City Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, we do have 2 presenters for the open forum. I will let in the first presenter. Thank you, Your Worship. The first attendant has joined the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mr. Gimmick. Welcome to our council meeting. You have 5 minutes to address council on the matter with which you wish to speak. The floor is yours.
Hello?
We can hear you. Mr. Dimmick, can you hear us?
I can hear everyone. Can everybody hear me?
We can hear you anytime you're ready.
Fantastic. Well, hello everyone, and thank you for allowing me to speak today. I have to talk quickly because I only have 5 minutes and there's a lot of information. My name is Sean Dimmick and I was a resident of Beaumont for 38.5 years. I moved to Southern BC in September of last year. My parents moved to Beaumont in the 70s and still live in Beaumont. I've owned a couple properties in Beaumont and still have a rental property. Oh my goodness.
Mr. Dimick, if you could please mute the live stream in the background, you're just getting a little bit of feedback.
Okay, I
Thank
hope
you.
that's better. This is the first time that I've spoken to council, and up until a couple of months ago, I've never complained to the town about anything. Not about the lack of snow removal or dandelions growing everywhere, or even how council spends our tax dollars. Although if Bellevue Rink is going to be torn down, you'll definitely hear from me again. This all started in April when I called in to see if the letter from the Accurate Assessment Group was real. It looked like a scam to me and many other people. I spoke to 2 people at City Hall and they could not provide me with any answers other than it had to be filled out, and one said that I should make arrangements to have the forms filled out properly or make a trip back to Beaumont to complete. Weird when the person who told me that knew that I lived in BC and that non-essential travel shouldn't happen during COVID. So I called John Stewart on April 15th and we talked for 19 minutes. I asked him some questions and he assured me that he would get me some answers and that it would take a couple of days. I emailed and left John a voicemail on April 29th because I hadn't heard back from him and didn't get a response from him until I posted on a Facebook group on April 30th. I don't post on social media. This might have been my third or fourth post of my entire life. Weird how that works. He also told me to contact Pauline Donnan. More on her to come. John answered a couple of questions in his response on May 5th, and I replied by asking a couple more simple questions. Haven't heard back from him since. I emailed him May 12th and have left him approximately a dozen voicemails on his office line and cell since that date. That might sound like a lot, but it's only 1 or 2 voicemails a week, and I still don't have a response. Our last direct communication was May 5th when I emailed a couple more questions. Also, I'm pretty sure the office line has my number blocked so that it goes directly to voicemail, or the receptionist doesn't answer that phone at all. John Stewart told me to contact Pauline Donnan, so I emailed and left her a voicemail on April 30th. No response the following Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday. I emailed her again May 5th and CC'd John Stewart and left her another voicemail on May 5th. No response. I called her again on May 6th and she answered the phone. But she's not the person I needed to talk to. I needed to talk to Curtis DeBlanco. Communication with Curtis DeBlanco, who is the director of finance, started out great. We talked for 24 minutes on May 6th, and he actually emailed me later that day asking what questions I had. I thought it was fantastic. I emailed him my questions that night and left him a voicemail on May 13th asking for an update, and he emailed me back later that day with some answers. Great again. I emailed him a couple more questions and he replied on May 18th, but something seemed very off with the information, so I asked for clarification via email on May 18th. No response. I emailed him May 25th, May 28th, and no response. On June 4th, I emailed a couple counselors asking how to speak at a Zoom council meeting. Out of nowhere, haha, I received an email back from Curtis later that day stating, and I quote, "Information provided to be sufficient and will no longer be responding to this matter." Fine with me. Why not send a response via email and reply to one of the emails on May 18th, 25th, or 28th? Trying to deal with John Stewart, Pauline, and Curtis has been extremely frustrating. Curtis has provided some clarification, which is great and very much appreciated. These are not difficult questions that I've been asking. Through this, I have heard from numerous other people in Beaumont that John Stewart doesn't respond to emails or voicemails, and it's been like this for years. And that this also applies to other City Hall staff. Mr. Stewart, I understand that you cannot reply to every email or voicemail, but you assured me during that original phone conversation that lasted 19 minutes that you, not someone else, would answer my questions. Why haven't you responded? What policies and procedures are in place to make sure that taxpayers' questions are answered by city staff in a timely manner? A post on social media or asking how to speak at a council meeting shouldn't be the only way to get questions answered. And just for everyone's information, I have emailed documentation of everything I just said in case other councillors are interested. Thank you for your time and John Stewart, I would really appreciate some sort of response because I've been waiting a long time to hear from you. Thank you.
Well, Mr. Dimick, appreciate your coming in tonight. But let's how do I put this? The reason that you've not been corresponded with is because your mannerisms when communicating with myself and my staff have been both harassing and abusive in nature, and we don't have to put up with that.
I agree with
Second
that.
of all, your questions were answered. So from a city's perspective, the questions were done. Curtis took over, answered your questions expertly, and therefore the loop on this is closed. If you don't like those answers, I'm sorry about that, but they are what they are.
I have no issue with the answers. I have the issue with lack of communication back and forth.
Well, I'm not going to go around. This is a public forum. I'm not going to go around that tonight with you. Unless you have anything else to say, I think we're done here.
So are there any policies or procedures in place?
Yes, there are.
So waiting 2 or 3 weeks to receive an email back is acceptable?
Mr. Dimick, your situation falls into outside of the thing, and we're not going to go around this tonight. This is not going to happen. So appreciate you coming in tonight. And I think we're going to close this matter off and move on to our next presenter. Thank you for coming in. City Clerk, have we got our next presenter, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. Our next presenter is Corey Bolston, and I will just add Corey to the meeting right away here. Thank you, Your Worship. Corey has been added to the meeting. Thank you.
Good evening, Corey. Welcome to our council meeting this evening. Welcome to the open forum. Just so you know, you got about 5 minutes to cover your topic, give or take. After that, some council may open it up to the floor for council to ask some questions. Other than that, the floor is yours.
Excellent. Just a quick question. Does anybody know how I can share my screen?
Hang on. There should be a green button at the bottom of the Zoom that says share screen, but maybe the city
Yes.
clerk can help us out.
No, I see it. I got it.
Once you hit that, you'll have a bunch of windows one window that will pop up, and then you can choose your presentation.
Okay, I think this is the one I want. Okay, is that working for everybody?
It's pictures of, it says life would be better even in Beaumont with some chickens,
That's the one.
and it's working.
Okay. Hello, my name is Corey Bolston, and I have been a proud resident of Beaumont since 2010. I'm here today to speak on behalf of many other Beaumont residents who are eager for action from the city of Beaumont to take the necessary actions in allowing the raising of backyard hens, as well as other urban agricultural pursuits. But first, a little bit about me and why I'm here. I sent my first email to council inquiring about raising backyard hens years ago. I was told that hens did not fit into Beaumont's animal control bylaw nor the land use bylaw, but that the city was actively working to make amendments to these bylaws that would allow backyard hens. I was told to keep checking the status of these bylaws on the website, as change was just around the corner. Earlier this spring, my neighbor sent a similar email to council and received almost the exact same response. In March, she decided to create a private Facebook group called Backyard Chickens for Beaumont, Alberta, which now boasts 116 members, all of whom are in support of backyard hens within Beaumont boundaries. I've collected the names, addresses, and phone numbers of 52 residents to date who are dedicated to making backyard hens a reality in this fine city of ours. Local food isn't just a trend, it's the future. And so I began researching into what was required to responsibly own backyard hens in an urban setting. My research was much easier than I'd imagined, as I could easily access the policies and regulations of multiple municipalities near Beaumont, including the City of Edmonton, Leduc, St. Albert, Devon, Grand Prairie, and Red Deer, to name a few, who have already successfully implemented urban hen keeping programs. These municipalities all have similar policies with minor deviations, and all have gone through a pilot program process beforehand with exceptionally successful results. Making my research easier yet was the fact that the City of Beaumont commissioned and received an urban agricultural report in 2018, which I emailed to each of you today, earlier this afternoon, and I really encourage you to read. In this report, created by students in their final year of urban and regional planning at the University of Alberta, 295 Beaumontonians participated in a public survey. Participants were from a large range of neighborhoods and represented diverse ages from 16 to 99. Overall, every type of urban agriculture mentioned in the public survey received a majority support. That means that of everyone surveyed, everyone agreed that Beaumont needs more urban agriculture, not only backyard hens, but also in the form of garden and urban agricultural programs for schools and the general public, community gardens, orchards, and edible landscaping. Respondents recognized urban agriculture as a method of encouraging a sense of community, sustainable urban living, and contributing to healthy lifestyles and a healthy community. Beaumont is a vibrant city that prides itself on innovation and sustainability, with a strong focus on building a solid foundation for its future generations. We feel that the ability to own backyard hens, as well as all other forms of urban agriculture mentioned in the Urban Agriculture Report, as well as other forms of is a natural step forward, as indicated by the many communities that have already successfully implemented similar programs. As indicated as an objective of the Beaumont Community Development Plan published in 2019, page 31, Beaumont embraces its agricultural heritage and encourages opportunities for all types of urban agriculture. The same plan promised to explore regulations for community gardens, backyard chickens, beekeeping, and rooftop gardens under the Land Use Bylaw section. The benefits of urban agriculture are vast and varied. I'm not going to spend my time tonight listing them all off because I believe that Beaumont councillors are very educated within their many publications and reports on the benefits that come with urban agricultural practices, including the keeping of urban hens. So let's talk some statistics. Regarding school gardens and programming, in the public survey of 2018, 94% of respondents supported urban agricultural programming for children and youth. 94%. When such a huge majority of respondents were in support of school gardens, how can this program not have already been implemented? 89% of Beaumont respondents agree that the establishment of community gardens would be beneficial. 86% of respondents agree that Beaumont should incorporate edible landscaping into public lands. 65% of respondents agreed they would be in support of backyard hens, and 66% of respondents agree that Beaumont should consider a pilot project, which would allow a sample of homes to have backyard hens. These numbers show that the citizens of Beaumont again and again are in support of urban agriculture developments in our city, yet no policies or bylaws have yet been amended to reflect this demand. I'm here tonight to ask why. According to the 2019 Municipal Development Plan, once urban agriculture in all forms are thriving within the community, Beaumont will have successfully achieved its goal of being a healthy, vibrant community. I'm here to say it's time to make this happen. Urban agriculture is not thriving in this community, and there's no reason that it shouldn't be. The demand is loud, the residents are tired of waiting, and we want some action. I'm here to offer my time and my energy to the City of Beaumont in any way that's required to make urban agriculture a reality in this incredible city of ours, effective immediately. Thank you so much for your time and considerations. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
I appreciate that, Corey, coming in. Actually, it's kind of interesting. Action you want, action you shall have. Is actually our community standards bylaw, which is currently under development, is actually coming back to council for a first look in the fall, and before it goes out to public consultation and public involvement, which will cover at least some of this urban agricultural part that you said. So I apologize if we've been a little slow getting out the gate, but we are moving on it, even though we are moving a little slow. So yeah, it is coming, and we do appreciate your volunteering to consult with us when we're ready for public consultation. I'll open it up to members of council for questions and comments. I'm not sure who was first. Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you very much, Corey, for the presentation. I'm with you on that. Let's get going. And for my part, I just wanted to see if you were aware of the RAMP task force that's been happening in our region, the Regional Agricultural Master Plan.
No, I don't think I am.
Well, I would point you to the website, Edmonton Metropolitan Regional Board, and RAMP.
Okay.
And if you look it up, I believe there's still time for you to participate in a survey that's there for people that are stakeholders and interested in urban agriculture and agriculture in general. And I know council agrees that we have huge opportunities, economic and definitely social, around the whole agricultural industry. So definitely support what you're saying. And yeah, we've got all the words there. Now we got to get the action. So, thanks, Corey.
Thank you.
Councillor Runka Swain, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk and Councillor Stout. Popular topics.
And good evening, Corey. I really appreciate your passionate comments there. Certainly came across it. Thank you for all the effort you put into this. I wonder if administration could just provide a bit of context for not just for Corey, but for other folks who are listening and interested in this, just around the timing of that. John, Mayor, sorry, mentioned community standards bylaw, but I wonder if administration could just provide a bit more background around what that looks like. What is the timing for engagement, so that there could be some more concrete timelines for this for everyone in Beaumont who's interested in this program. So, Mike, I hope you could provide a bit of background on that.
Theo?
Sure, certainly, Councillor Moncalves through the chair. The community standards bylaw is all encompassing, and it contains so many different things that require public engagement. And obviously in the last 16 months, we haven't had the opportunity to do that, but we have been working on the development of the bylaw. Our plan is to bring it back this fall and to have the public engagement as well, so we can really zero in on what's important to the bylaw. You know, it contains things like nuisance grounds and, you know, bees and chickens, backyard hens, and people typically migrate to one end of those continuums or the other. So it's going to be a very interesting process, but our plan is to have a draft in front of council in the fall.
I guess if I could follow up on that, that's okay. So, I mean, obviously, you know, Corey identified it in our own documents that we said this is where we wanted to be, a visionary statement. I guess the concern or the challenge would be that, you know, we're seeing the support for this at a high level through some data, but if the process gets dragged down through some of the other aspects within that larger bylaw, is there an opportunity to carve this out, or just trying to think of ways and path forward here, given the timing of this and where folks want to get moving with it. So just curious if there have been any thoughts around potentially looking at that overall bylaw and how that engagement consultation might come back.
So far, our approach has been to make the community standards bylaw all encompassing. So it would include those types of things. I could talk to planning and see if it makes sense to bolt it on to something else, but that was a decision that was made, you know, quite some time ago, that we required this community standards bylaw. And you're right, there are other parts of it that can bog it down. Yeah, so we can look and see if there's something we can bolt it onto. I'm not sure that there is.
Yeah, I just think it would be, maybe not now, but as we get that back, you said you'd be presenting it back to council in the fall, and sort of engagement after that process, or is this engagement beforehand and then come in council? I wasn't quite clear on that.
Well, what we typically do is bring it back as a draft to a committee to see if we're on the right track, and then we go out to public. We typically don't want to go out to the public with something the council hasn't put their eyes on yet.
Yeah, so we're talking committee of the whole in the fall, and then public engagement, and then, you know, not coming, obviously the new council that would be there would be the ones that would be making that decision. Is that a fair comment?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that there's some clarity around the timelines. And yeah, I'll speak for myself here. You know, I won't get ahead of the public engagement process, but certainly I've heard a lot of positive feedback, wanting us to move forward with this as soon as possible. So thanks for your answers there, Mike.
Councillor Van Newkirk, followed by Councillor Stout.
Yeah, thank you for coming in and thanks for the presentation tonight. I believe there was I was clicking frantically here to try and look through our past budgets, but there was a community garden that was approved in a past budget, but did not come to life for operational reasons at that time. So there was historically some dollars put forward to that, but it didn't come together for whatever reason at that time. And very thorough presentation. Thank you for that. For me on my end, I really do await the further public engagement on the full package of urban agriculture. You're here presenting on urban hens, which is great, and you've gathered a group of people that are passionate about that, which is even better. Thank you for that. And the other sides of the urban agricultural front, there are groups who are interested in the front yard gardens, and as the graph stated, the orchard type trees in the park and stuff. And my desire for the urban agriculture package would be to look at it as a whole and how the strategy all works together, because urban agriculture it is circular and it works together, right? So, my preference tonight would be to look at everything as a whole and see where that gets. So once again, thank you for presenting.
Councillor Stout. And then we'll go back to the presenter for some closing comments if she wishes to make some, and then we'll move on.
Thank you, Worship. Hi, Corey. Thanks for your presentation and thanks for the passion and excitement you bring to that. That was, I agree with you. I think it's high time that we took some action on this particular subject, in not just as Councillor Van Newkirk alluded to, not just to the on the urban chickens, but on the other aspects as well, including obviously beekeeping. That must have been at the front of my mind. Question for administration. When Ms. Bolston raised this, I looked for the urban agriculture report on the town website, did multiple searches, went back through the old agendas. I could not find it at all. As you probably recall, I know one of the authors of it, so I was able to get a copy from her, but I couldn't find it on the town website. Is there any way we could make sure that it's there and make it available?
CEO?
Sure, I can look for it. I'll ask, probably talk to Joanne and find out where it's at and how come we don't have a link, or possibly we do have it, it's just difficult to find.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, if we could flag it in some way so that it can be found. It's possible that it's there and I can't see it, certainly, yes. But then if that's the case, then it'll also be difficult for any resident or member of the public to find too. So if we could flag it if it's already there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Stout. And once again, myself, Corey, thank you for coming in. I'll give you the opportunity to close out if you wish, but I really do appreciate it, because it's a very timely message considering what we're about to head into in the fall in relation to it. So.
Well, thank you very much. I did just have a couple of comments. I also tried to search for that document online this afternoon to put in my slideshow, and I couldn't find it either. So I second what Mr. Stout was saying. And then the other question I just had for you was, I did fill out the phase 2 public engagement for urban agriculture, the pilot program between, I believe it was like May 14th and 31st that was available through the town website. How does that fit into the community standards bylaw?
Was that with RAMP? Hang on, need someone from administration.
Mike, are you able to add value to that, Mr. Berezowski? I'm not sure what she's referring to, so I'd have to get back to you.
Sorry, can you repeat what the survey was?
Yeah, I believe it was called the phase 2 public engagement, and it was. There were a lot of different things discussed in it, but there was an entire section on the urban agricultural pilot program asking you at the end if you would be willing to volunteer and in what way.
Okay. Well, through your worship to Corey, I think that answers Councillor Kathy Barnhart's question. That was the RAMP survey.
And I see Mr. Wong has popped up, so maybe he's got something to add too.
Yeah, between May 14th and May 31, that was the survey and public engagement for the environmental master plan. And one of the action item is that around urban agriculture as part of providing environmental sustainability within the city of Beaumont. So yeah, and that is one of the minor themes, if I can say. Yeah, so it is not exactly urban agriculture, but it is the probably overarching environmental sustainability within the city. So yeah, we just finished the public engagement on that.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah, and when can we expect to see the results from that?
The result, we are analyzing that, and it will be incorporated into the final draft of the environmental master plan, which is tentatively planned to bring back to council early August for council's approval. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming in tonight.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so that brings us to item 6, public hearings. We have no public hearings this evening, which brings us to item 7A under registered presentations, the library capital project updates.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will just let in Laura right now into the meeting.
Good evening, Laura. How are you tonight? Oh, you're on mute. You got us?
Hello.
Oh, how are you?
Okay, I made it in. I'm well. How about yourself?
Can't complain.
Good
All right,
stuff.
So we understand you're here to give us a bit of an update. So the floor is all yours.
I sure am. I'm just going to share my screen here. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yeah, I have it.
Awesome, perfect. So thank you so much, Mayor Stewart and Council, for the opportunity to present to you guys once again. I'm excited to be bringing you some updates on the library's 2021 capital projects today. So before I dive into the updates, I just wanted to come back to what grounds all the work that we do here at the library, and that is our vision and our values. So the library is at its core about connection. We connect people to information, literacy, knowledge, community, resources, space, technology, ideas, and learning. And as we strive to realize that vision, we're guided by our values of lifelong learning, innovation and creativity, collaboration and partnership, and equity, diversity, and inclusion. So in 2021, Council approved budget for 2 capital projects to help us realize that vision. While leaning into our values. And the first was a library bike, and the second was design work for an expanded library space. Both projects will enhance the livability of Beaumont, ensuring that recreation and cultural facility infrastructure is available to all citizens. So I wanted to start by giving everybody an update on our library bike. The first exciting update is that the library bike is no longer just the library bike. It has been officially christened BB the Biblio bike. The naming of the bike was the first opportunity we had to do some community engagement with the bike, and it was named by members of the public through our social media naming campaign in May. We had lots of wonderful suggestions, but Biblio Bike, BB for short, won the day, so that's the name of our bike. The bike itself is here and looking beautiful. It is an Urban Aero electric cargo bike. It gives us lots of room to stow programming supplies and collections while zipping around quite adeptly on all Beaumont terrain. I have taken it for a few spins, and it's also lots of fun to ride. So the first public appearance of our bike will be on June 10th. We'll be at the Centerville Market this Thursday night for a membership drive and some impromptu stories and rhymes. But the bike will go into full operation in July and August. This is just a preview of the schedule that we're going to have in place, but we'll be visiting parks around Beaumont, the weekly market, and Chateau Vitaline on a weekly basis. We also know that things are reopening for the summer, so we'll be exploring special opportunities and partnerships as they arrive through the summer, and special events on weekends. So our second capital project for the year is design work to complete a library expansion. Council approved funding of $150,000 to complete this design work for a future library expansion. You'll recall that the current library is about half the size required to meet Government of Alberta essential standards for space and collection. And most importantly, we know that we're missing out on opportunities to address community need due to those space constraints. So in the expanded space, we are going to be looking at creating a destination children's area. And this would be really the only free indoor recreational space for families in Beaumont and a gathering space for the whole community. The makerspace will be a technology sandbox for the community where creativity and innovation come to play. It will provide barrier-free access to creative technologies and equipment, and it will be a place where everyone and anyone can come to explore and discover. And finally, maybe not as exciting for the public, but we will be adding much needed staff space to allow us to modernize our processes and ensure efficient library operations. And ultimately, we move to aim from our current 8,500 square feet to approximately 16,000 square feet, allowing us to meet that essential Government of Alberta standard for our current population size in Beaumont. We had some exceptional help from city staff. I just want to say a huge thank you to Paul Suter and Joanne Schwartz, who did incredible work with us on our RFP process. We could not have done it without them. We went out to tender in May and we received 11 bids for the project. And ultimately the winning prime consultant is Reimagine Architects Limited. We were very impressed by their exceptional focus on community engagement. They have a lot of that in their plan and it's quite iterative at every step. And they have huge expertise and experience expanding libraries. We have begun work with Reimagine and we're on schedule to present detailed design drawings with a Class B cost estimate to council in November. We will be starting stakeholder engagement in late June, and I will be in contact with council at that time about participating in that process. We really want to make sure that the final product realizes the community's goals, but also council's vision for the city. So that's all I have for you guys tonight on updates for the capital projects. Thank you for funding these exciting projects, and I'd love to answer any questions you have about this work or any other aspects of the library's work.
Appreciate that. It's always fun and exciting to see projects that are progressing. So I'll open it up to questions for members of council. From my own perspective, it's nice to see the bike, and it's nice to see us moving forward on that design proposal. So great work, keep it up. And Councillor McGowan, you're first up.
Yeah, thanks. And hopefully my audio is a little bit better. My headphones in. Thank you, Laura, for coming in and presenting today. Great update. I saw you guys kind of piloting and test riding the bike in and around the library. It was very, very exciting to see that. Looking forward to heading down to Colonial Park there for story time. That'll be wonderful. But I did wanted to check in on the application or the grants that was provided. You gave an update around the expansion of the library. City Council just recently, directed administration to pull together a committee looking at the arts space. So I'm just curious because at one point there was a discussion around, does that art space consider looking at a library expansion? So I'm just curious if they're talking with you on that and how the library is potentially involved in those type of discussions.
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. I'll say right off the bat, our RFP flagged the need for coordinating with the arts community. And now that I know we have the committee being struck, we will be working with them. The architecture firm and the library is very aware that there is a real interest in the potential of adding on that arts facility in the library space. We are hopeful at the library that there will be funding available for this expansion to the library before the potential construction of a performing arts facility. We recognize that that's quite a large project and that may take some years to get to. And there is a pretty urgent need for an expansion to the library, but any design work that we come back to you guys with will include consultation with that committee and that community, and we'll bring with it proposals for how we can easily add that extension if adding that performing arts center does end up happening on this space and connected to the library.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly what I wanted to hear. So thank you for that. Just making sure we're all talking together, and you guys are. So thanks for that. And just lastly, just appreciate everything you guys did during the pandemic when you couldn't be open to the public and continuing to keep up your programming. A lot of value from a lot of residents. So just thank you to you and all your staff for trying to figure out how to work in this environment. You guys did a great job, so thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Are there any other councillors wishing to ask a question or make a comment tonight? Seeing none. Once again, Laura, thank you very much. Appreciate you coming in tonight. It's exciting to see you moving forward, and your organization is doing great work in our community, and we hope we can continue to support you in doing that. So thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Thanks.
Great. So that brings us to 8A. It's a little early for a break, but the next two could be fairly lengthy discussions. So I'm going to make a command decision, and we're going to have a quick 5, and then we'll get. For the quick break, we do. I apologize. I did miss out on one because I inadvertently checked it off early. I would like to welcome the Beaumont Performing Arts Collective to present on a proposal this evening. So, City Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. I will admit Hunter and Sherry into the meeting here now.
Good evening, Hunter. Can you hear us? I think you're still on mute.
Good afternoon, Mayor Stewart. It's Sherry Vera here on behalf of the Performing Arts Collective, and we do have Hunter joining from the studio as well. So just want to make sure that she is on before I start.
She's on, but currently on mute. So
okay,
she gave us a thumbs up. So I think we're good. So whenever you're ready.
He has the presentation, so I'll just wait for her to get her first slide up.
Okay, I see the screen.
Great. So thank you to Mayor Stewart and councillors for allowing us to come and speak to you today. The Beaumont Performing Arts Collective is a registered not-for-profit whose vision is to see a well-connected and supported performing arts facility in Beaumont. Next slide. The current members of the Performing Arts Collective are Ashley Reinhardt, the owner and director of the Seeds and Sprouts Early Learning Center, as well as the program director of the Grand and Out of School Care. We have Vicki Summers, who has a BA in Accounting and Finance, holds her CPA and ACCA designations with over 20 years experience working with various businesses and accounting roles. We're also pleased to have Quentin Tutusis, Director of Operations at Treaty 6 Productions. He's a Northern Cree pound maker and Saskatchewan world-class round dancer, singer, and hand drummer. And myself, who brings my background as a performer and working with volunteer groups in the performing arts, including touring groups and arts organizations in Saskatchewan, as well as in Alberta. I am a member of the Barnstormers Solidarity Performance Group that runs out of Ruminari Live. And of course, last but not least, is our fearless leader, Dr. Hunter Gates. She's a director, an actor, a stuntman, a theater maker, and an educator. Hunter has more than 30 years of experience in professional and community theater, film, and television. She is the managing director of Ruminari Live Arts in Beaumont. She's the director of the Hunter Gates Academy of Physical Theater, the CEO of Comedy for Communities International. She's also a board member of the Beaumont Chamber of Commerce, Beaumont Arts Council, and Rise Up Society of Alberta, as well as the Empowering Women Entrepreneurs in Beaumont. The project that we've brought for you this evening is a unique opportunity to partner with a local business person and create a 150-seat performing arts space in Beaumont within the next year. We will be able to leverage the current building climate and available commercial space in Beaumont, take advantage of millions of dollars in provincial and federal matching grant funding in this fiscal year, and develop that public-private partnership with a local arts business that will bring extensive expertise in program development and theater management, and to add a fully functioning professional performing arts venue and new community event space for our growing arts community in Beaumont. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Hunter so that she can share her vision with you all.
Hunter, you're still on mute.
Okay, so in the fall of 2020, Ruminary Live Arts was approached by some founders with a question of whether the small intimate theaters might be possible within the retail space that is in abundance in Beaumont. As managing director of Beaumont Art and Beaumont's Ruminary Live Arts, we created a vision for the creation of a small performing arts venue that would enhance the social and intellectual life of Beaumont. And in the event of success, becoming absolutely, visibly, and unmistakably a popular institution, making a large appeal to the whole community. We have 2 locations ready to take on this project. We need seed money and support from the city to make this a reality for Beaumont within the year. These 2 options are 5305 Magazine Ave, units 112 to 115, with a total of 6,365 square feet housed in Bryant Heritage Plaza on the south side. And also an opportunity at 5601 Magazine Ave, Building B, a 5,000 square foot standalone building at Place La Rose du Marais. At either location, the interior will be a space that generously embraces us and supports us with natural beauty and amazing artistic experiences individually. The design focuses on stunning acoustics in a dramatic setting, hosting concerts, live performances, cultural events, music ensembles, high definition broadcasts from artists from around the world, as well as classic and independent film. We are at a point of knowing that the programs are important, the performers are important, artistic leadership is important, but the building is also important. In this creation phase, we need to focus on the build as it is critical to the experience in as much as the performance, programming, leadership, education, and outreach initiatives. Project uses for the space: for theater, local arts groups, as well as professional attractions for plays, concerts, dance, and cultural presentations. Meetings can take place in the form of town hall, lectures, corporate events, training sessions. Live air to video can range from TED Talk events, lectures to live to air Saturday matinees. This market in live streaming is open to arts organizations, and it's becoming extremely popular for audiences. We also have cinema presentations that will have technical capacity of presenting movies of high quality. This would take the form of a movie club showing films from things like film festivals, maybe classic films, maybe indie films, or the venue could present second run feature films similar to the venue in Hinton, presenting items on an ongoing basis. The venue could offer community groups that are not arts driven, a venue that can hold fundraising events. Our theater lobby is designed for celebrations that can be used for wedding receptions, corporate events, and meetings. This space could accommodate a gallery, a crafters market, and small recitals. The studio space could be used as a venue operator, by the venue operator, or arts groups for workshops and educational events, and individuals who could use the facility for their own events or family events. The demand for theater. We have a shortfall of available rental venues in Beaumont. There's a need to provide and develop performing arts in Beaumont, and we need to look at providing entertainment for our community within our community. Realizing that council finds itself in a vicious conundrum regarding the performing arts space in Beaumont, we may be able to help solve that problem. We are proposing a 150-seat theater that is in comparison with other successful community theaters like the Walterdale in Edmonton or the Manluck in Wetaskiwin. It is cost effective. The capital cost is relatively low compared to other options. There's an opportunity to partner with local small businesses and leverage proven expertise within the theater department and management of our facility. The standalone site is already available, fully serviced, and ready to start building immediately. It fills a need that, as Beaumont currently has 0 performing arts spaces available for theater, music, or dance, despite our ever-growing community demand. If the venue is publicly subsidized, the proposed theater would be made available to all community arts groups. Project costs and options have already been determined for this project. We're looking at a 1-year completion. In the future, the proposed theater could continue to work in tandem with the 400-seat theater center when it's built. It could then be Beaumont's venue for smaller and more intimate productions. Our timeline for Bryant Heritage Plaza is 7 to 10 months. For Place La Rose des Marais is 6 to 12 months. The numbers, it's always good. The numbers, our builder is Cambrian Construction. The architect that we have is Dialogue. Our cost breakdown is $413,061 for general cost. Demolition is $30,000. Building cost $2,104,758. Total budget is $2,547,819. I always like to throw in the GST, so we have it in front of our eyes. Our total cost is $4,429,311. This is not a space that we would own unless we purchased it, which is an extra $2 million. If we do go with this option, the lease is $11,000 a month for the first year, and it goes all the way up in a grading scale to $20,000 per month in year 5. Place La Rose des Marais, the builder is Synergy Construction. Our general contractor is ICM Project Management. We would own this particular land, and it is $450,000. Our hard and soft shell cost $2,415,000. Our building cost $471,057. Total budget $7,671,507. Our GST again at $2,450,000. And our total cost is $10,121,507. So what are we asking for? For Bryant Heritage Plaza, we're asking for a $3 million outlay, and for Place La Rose des Marais, a $9 million. We are wanting to apply for the Provincial Community Facilities Enhancement Grant. This is a matching grant, and if obtained, we will get a $1 million grant. We've spoken to Brad Rutherford, our MLA, who is willing to write a letter of support for this grant. The deadline for this year's intake for this grant is June 15th. So we are looking to see if we are able to at least get a letter of support from the city if they wish to proceed with this. We're asking the city to contribute the $3 million to the project build of Bryant Heritage Plaza. This would contribute and allow us over half of that build total cost. If the city decides that they feel that the standalone option is preferable, we're asking for $9 million to assure that this build costing is obtained within our time limit. Thank you so much for letting us talk today. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.
Well, I do appreciate your coming in today. This is an exciting project. Yeah, it's an interesting thing. Just looking at the asks, this is going to require probably more time and conversation and some admin time than we have tonight. But before I make the motion to move this to a committee of the whole for a grander discussion, I will open it up to questions and comments from members of council. Councilor McGowan.
Yeah, thanks, Hunter and Sheriff, for coming in tonight, and certainly appreciate the vision, a lot of work going into this. You know, as you're talking through that, you know, it all sounded like it fit within the vision for, you know, supplementing it and helping out the performing arts community and other areas like you mentioned there. I guess the one thing I can't quite wrap my head around here is, maybe I'll ask the question first. So yeah, let's say Beaumont contributed to this. Who would operate the space?
Right now, the group that we have a board that's put together, the Beaumont Performing Arts Collective, and they are the ones that would run this space.
Thank you. And so if either the city or a user group or some collection of individuals wanted to use that space, they would go through and rent out the board. So there'd be no controlling interest at all from the city of Beaumont. This is purely just a cash injection to help you guys get off the feet.
Absolutely.
Okay. So
just to clarify, effectively what you're asking for is a grant?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Sorry, Councillor.
That's okay. And I mean, obviously, you guys are aware that this council is trying to figure out how to fill that space for a performing arts facility in our community. We've struck up that committee, so I'm not sure what any conversations that have gone on there. That would be a public facility. Looks like owned and operated by Beaumont. So I guess where I struggle with this, and I'm hoping you can provide some clarification for me, is that this is using taxpayer dollars to fund. I understand it's a not-for-profit piece, but this is a pretty significant $3 million grant to help get this one not-for-profit off the ground. And yes, it would fill a need in a space, but I'm not quite sure how taxpayer dollars. I personally could justify putting $3 million taxpayer dollars into this when we could look at whether it's the $3 million or the $9 million. That's a significant portion towards building a broader facility that we've all agreed here that is needed in Beaumont. That would be owned by the city of Beaumont and operated that way. So I'm just curious if you could help me get through that question.
Absolutely. This space would be in tandem, and it's a small and intimate space, and it is for the people of Beaumont. It's not just a private space. This will be a space that Beaumontonians would be able to enjoy on an ongoing basis. Right now, we have an opportunity with COVID and with what's going on that we have builders, we have engineers, we have architects that are willing to work to get this to fruition within the year, and have that gusto going. What will happen with our arts facility, our arts center, if this proves to be what we know it's going to be, it's an active space. It will only solidify that Beaumont needs that larger space, that we have some grounding to say, okay, this is great if we have a small space, but we also need a larger space. And that makes the center even more valid in the time frame, the 5-10 years time frame that we are looking at for that space.
Yeah.
I see Ms. Vera has her hand up. Maybe she wants to add on that question.
Yeah, I guess just in response to Councillor Swain's comments, the details of how we would structure the relationship in this public-private partnership with the nonprofit, we can work out those details to the comfort of council. We have a business person, local business person, offering and having spent a good deal of our own money to actually bring this project to you, fully costed, ready to go. And she has also supported the Performing Arts Collective in getting off the ground and putting the seed money together for us to be functioning. We have a really experienced theater director and manager willing to help manage this space, which takes that off the plate for the city of Beaumont. So I see lots of positives. And although this is a unique kind of relationship for Beaumont to enter into as a taxpayer, I think public-private partnerships are really important. And I really would think it is worth going through the process of trying to figure out how to define that relationship so that taxpayers are really comfortable with it.
I appreciate the additional information, and I don't doubt that the space would be of use and value. But personally, and I'm sure myself and my family would spend a lot of time down there, but I'm not sure how I could provide a decision today with the June 15th date for $3 million. That seems a lot, and I know you guys have done a lot of work to get here. But I know not the answer you're looking for, but for me personally, I'd need a lot more information around this. My gut initially was that we needed a public space. If this was able to get off the ground, great for Beaumont, absolutely. But I'm not sure I could commit any decision today on a $3 million or a $9 million ask. So I'll leave it there for now and see what my other councillors have to share. But I do appreciate you bringing this forward. And I know not the answers you're looking for from me anyway, but it does look like an exciting space, and definitely wish you guys luck. So I'll leave it there and maybe come back if there are other questions or comments from other councillors.
Thank you very much. Just a quick reminder to council, like this is going to require a broader, fuller discussion. So this is just for some quick overhead issues. I'm not looking for any individual councillor's personal position on this tonight. This is going to need some time to gel and think. And like I say, I will move at the end of this discussion to move this to a committee of the whole so that council can consider it in its fullness of how we want to proceed with this project. So sure, Councillor, sorry, go ahead.
To be fair, the ask was to provide $3 million by June 15th. So I'm providing my position on that.
The ask was to provide a letter of support for the grant. So I do have my question is how does that work if we're not decided on an option? But I'll get there in a minute. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Mayor, you can start with that question if you like. I was going to switch gears a bit. So if you want to follow that train of thought and then come back to me, I'd be fine with that.
Sure, I will do that. So yeah, the question is with the grant application, looking for a letter of support from the city, like what exactly does that entail if we haven't committed funds or settled on an option and we're going forward? June 15th seems like it's only 7 days away.
Yeah, we know. Yeah, no, yeah, I know. It's in order for us to apply for this grant, we need to have a letter of support from municipal. It was recommended to us that we have a letter from that they would be interested in putting this together. If something falls through and that doesn't happen, then the grant is null and void and it's fine. It's just, can we get it in by the deadline? Then great. And if you decide on the 22nd or whenever the meeting of the whole is, that this is not something that you want to pursue, then that we just take out our grant application. That was the process that they advised us on.
Okay, that'll be another question. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, my question was still going to speak on the funding path, I would guess, but I guess simply stated, if you didn't gain the support from council and the city, do you guys have a plan B, in the background that you would be prepared to move forward with this project without city support? Where are you at with that?
Absolutely. It's just we can do it now within a year. We would have to wait a year or two in order to progress it, just so that we could get our funding, another funding source that is going to support it. We have a lot of partners that are interested in helping, and that's either operationally or through the build, sponsoring different things within the facility. So it just means that it would postpone our plan. It doesn't mean it's off the table. It just means that we postpone.
Yeah, no, that's good. It's a lot to digest tonight. Thanks for coming in for sure. There's a lot of thoughts going through my mind around the budget process, the feasibility study, the steering committee, the library plan that, as you acknowledge, there's a lot of moving parts on the arts conversation in Beaumont. So yeah, thanks for coming in. That's it for me right now.
Councillor Danlick.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Good evening, Ms. Gates. Good evening, Ms. Vera. Thank you for your presentation. I have a couple of quick questions, if you wouldn't mind. Could you please expand, if you can, on Mayor Stewart's earlier question regarding what exactly does the letter of support entail? If you could just expand on that a little more specific, if you don't mind. I didn't quite get the meat and potatoes of what that letter needs to say exactly at this point.
Yeah, the matching grant. Sure, I'm sorry for cutting you off. The matching grant for that is it's a $1 million facility enhancement grant that is going on. If the city is interested in pursuing or support for this particular project, then they said, what I was told is that if the city would say that they would be interested in putting, supporting this at this amount of money, at whatever that amount of money is. It's just a letter of support and not necessarily a letter saying, yes, we're going to give it to them. And that's the way they worded it for me, because of the time restrictions.
Okay, so if I'm reading it correctly, just to clarify, if you wouldn't mind, please, you're suggesting a letter of support would not have any kind of financial equivalency attached to it, which I don't understand how it would be a matching grant unless the city's prepared to put money in. That's my understanding. A letter of support would require us to commit to some kind of financial assistance. That's how a letter of support, in my interpretation, a letter of support would be required. And I don't believe that we're at the stage right now this evening or by the 15th to provide that letter at this point. That's my understanding. If I'm wrong, please correct me. So that's my first question. Thank you for answering my first question. My second question was, you mentioned in your presentation, one of you ladies did, sorry, on matching grants. This is the one grant you mentioned. You mentioned federal and provincial grants as well. Are there other grants that are available? And you say matching from who? Matching from this. So if the city puts in money, it gets matched, or where's it being matched from? I'm assuming from the city, but can you clarify that, please?
The city will match, the city's funding would be matched by the province. There's also matching grants for the federals have it, and a couple of corporations have matching grants that we're pursuing right now. And so once we secure those, and as we progressively reach out to corporations, and we're progressively being proactive in reaching out to get funding for this project. And so as we get it, we just got a $20,000 grant that now we can put into a matching grant for the federal government, just as an example.
Thank you. I'll yield the floor, Mayor Stewart. I may have a follow-up question later on. I may not. I'll tell what time is. Thank you.
Councilor Hendricks, thank you.
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. Just a question about potential financing options. I understand the two that we've given here this evening. There's lease backs, there's take back mortgages. Have those been explored?
Not at this point, they have not.
So if you had, with one of the vendors, a lease back arrangement and a letter from them, would that not give you the lift you need for your grant program?
We know that the Bryant Heritage Plaza is not willing to discuss that at all. That is one option that the Bryant Heritage Plaza program would not. We are just starting our discussions and funding with the Place d'Arcos de Marais. They just need to know there's money on the table before they actually give any information. So that's where we are with them. Welcome to my life.
Right. So one of the things that could be discussed, of course, is the fact that if there's an ability to sign a long-term arrangement, long-term deal, and it's either co-signed backed by the City of Beaumont on the lease side, at least in the capital dollars don't have to come out of the community and on the front end, and that would allow you to get your build in. They typically would go out and get it financed anyway somewhere, and those dollars today are pretty cheap given the rates. So why wouldn't they look at a tenant that's prepared to sign a deal for an extended period of time, fill a space, take in some well-needed cash flow? Maybe that's the route you should take, and then come back to Beaumont with just an ask to make sure that that's covered, by way of some kind of an agreement, long-term, whatever. So.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Councilor Hendricks, thank you. Councilor Barnhart.
Thank you, Mayor, and good to see you, Hunter. and to see your proposal in coming forward, because I know how hard you've been working on it. And I have answers to all of my questions except for one, and it could just be that I missed it. You presented 2 locations. Is your request or is your plan to have both locations, or are you looking for one of those 2?
One of those 2.
One of those 2. And your priority would be which one?
That's a very good question. If I was the city, I would think that a standalone building would be more beneficial to a long ongoing. A theater is not something that is built, no matter how large or how small. It's not built as a temporary structure. This is a long-standing cultural space. And so if I had my choice, I would do the standalone. It has everything it needs. And we're not dealing with any landlords or any other tenants within its area. But as financing is one of the options here, and there's mounds of space down here on the south side that is available. If it is a cost effective, then there's nothing wrong with the plan for Bryant Heritage Plaza here.
And if I may, Bryant Heritage Plaza is the space you currently occupy, or is it a different space?
You know, it's exactly where it's where the studio is right now.
So you would be transforming your existing space into a different purpose?
No, because this space is Ruminary Live. That space would be the theater, and that's run by the Performing Arts Collective.
Oh, okay. Thanks. I just was a little confused on that. But like my colleagues have said, I think we need some more time with our administration as well to look at this. So thank you very much for coming in.
Councilor Tenlock, I see you raised your hand, and then.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Stewart. Ms. Gates, if you wouldn't mind indulging me just for a brief moment. You're suggesting this would be kind of a partnership, was part of the language you used in part of the presentation, which I appreciate. The ask was $3 million or $9 million, if I remember from your presentation. Let's take the $3 million option just for a moment here. I believe Mayor Stewart made it clear in earlier his comments that it is actually more of a grant you're looking for. So how do you define the partnership if you're looking for a grant of money? To me, a partnership would involve an ongoing relationship where we're involved in the operation, we're involved in the profit perhaps, we're also involved in the loss in that thing. That to me is a partnership. A grant is a grant, and a grant is simply a one-time gift and then we're out. I don't see that as being a partnership. So if you could please define to me, if you could, from your presentation, how you see this as being a partnership as opposed to a grant. If you could indulge me with that, please. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. When we're building a cultural space, it's not like running a business. It's a social partnership with the community that it surrounds. And it's an ongoing give and take because we're talking about culture. We're not talking about sweaters. We will always, as a theater, as a performance space, we always have a connection with the city that we're in, and we add to the city that we're in, and they hopefully will enjoy, take part in the culture that we're offering. So we're actually presenting a social partnership with the city.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Sherry, you get your hand up again. You could want to add in.
Yeah, thanks. I think to that end, the other parts of the partnership that we can explore, Dr. Gates has years and years of theater management experience and expertise that she is offering to bring to the Performing Arts Collective to help us be successful operationally in running a successful theater. Ruminary Live would be one of the anchor tenants and one of the main users of the theater space. So her arts education programs and performing groups that are running out of there would be users of the space. So those are all things that Hunter, as a business person, is bringing to the table here as part of that partnership. And we have a business plan that we've developed that's 27 pages long. We also have all of the drawings and everything else to go with the 2 options for the 2 centers. So happy to share those at some point, but just wanted to try and, I know it's a new concept for council. And I do think that there are other examples of successful public-private partnerships that could make this a really doable option that gets us an arts center soon, within a year. It's just phenomenal. And for about I think it was around $295 a square foot, which I have seen some of your other quotes at other meetings. That's a lot less per square foot. And the other thing that, you know, Beaumont needs a variety of art spaces, just like we have a variety of culture or sports centers. We have 4 hockey rinks. We have various different venues and opportunities. We've got a private business, the Arch, running out of your brand new sports complex. So yeah, it's just a matter of looking at this as a different kind of partnership.
Thank you for clarifying. Mayor Stewart, I'll yield the floor now. I do share some of Councilor Monkoff-Swain's earlier comments, but I look forward to the next discussion on this topic. Thank you very much. Thank you, ladies.
All right, thank you very much. I really do appreciate this discussion, and it's an exciting project, and it does fill the needs. Fortunately, I don't think we're going to get there on the timeline. So when's the, I know we want to move fast, we got a year, but I think we have some time to take advantage of it. My question is if we miss this intake, when's the next intake?
It's only a year. It'll go back in June 15th for the $1 million grant. It's a year. It's a yearly grant. It goes June 15th every year.
Oh, they only do it once a year?
Yeah.
At one point they were doing it biannually. Okay.
Yeah.
So I do think this is going to require some further in-depth discussion. So I'd like to make a motion to accept this report as information. And if you could send us your presentation documents, that would be great. And then I'm going to look to admin to see when that might come back to us for a bit of a fuller discussion. CEO?
Thank you very much, Mayor Stewart. We're going to really refer back to the comments that Councillor Hendricks provided. There's a number of options that need to be explored here, including reviewing of the business case and other suitable funding sources. So it's going to take some time. I think it's very clear you're not going to meet the June 15th. We've got a number of priorities. We've just formed a performing arts steering committee that's got a bunch of moving parts as well. So I would suggest that sometime later in the fall could be an option.
Okay. Thank you, CEO. Discussion on the motion. Councilor Monkoff-Swain.
The motion is to accept it as information, but I haven't heard a motion about asking for admin to do any work. Could you just clarify the motion?
Sorry, to accept as information and bring back to a future community of the whole. And the CAO said that timeline is currently looking like September, October.
Yeah, so if I could speak to that, and I hate to be the bad guy here, but I'll share my perspective. I don't know where council is thinking we're going to get $3 million from. We don't have any money in grants, right? So we've got 3 options: grants, we don't have any money. We either deplete our reserves to get this $3 million, or we go the tax increase route, and that's looking at about a 17% tax increase by the time we look at $3 million divided 175K. So I don't know where this is, how this is possible for this council in this term, until the next budget cycle. I think this is a great opportunity, and I wish it every success, but I don't think this is something that the city should be contributing to. Well, and by asking, so to finish, to ask administration to go and do a bunch of work on top of the ask that we've already had, I think we need to first look at what our options are for the broader community. And that's where our public taxpayer dollars should go towards. Wait for that information to come back. I recognize that there is a lot of great work here, but the presenters talked about their option B, and maybe that timeline's a little bit longer. And unfortunately, that's where I sit on this. I don't want administration to put any more time into this one. Certainly come in and work with the steering committee and go through that information and talk to the steering committee if they're not part of it. I'm not sure, and see how this could participate with it. But my personal priority is the larger space to fill the needs of the broader Beaumont, and then we can look to supplement there. I think $3 million, if we go the tax increase or depleting our reserves, will completely hamstring us from doing anything with the broader performing arts community in the city. So I don't support the motion to ask administration to bring this back. I think we accept it as information and leave it to the folks here to reach out to the performing arts, to the steering committee and have the discussions that way. I just don't know where we're going to get this money from. And I don't want administration to spend the time looking at it when we know what our finances are right now.
Okay, so just for my clarification, you'd rather see it go to the steering committee than to admin?
I just think that there's information, and unfortunately we can't provide that letter by the 15th. I think everyone's agreement on that, but I personally, I leave it up to the presenters to then reach out to the steering committee and get involved in that process to make sure it's part of the bigger picture. Like I said, I know I'm coming across as the bad guy here, but I don't see how we can provide taxpayer dollars for this. So I'd love to see it get up and running. I'd love to see Plan B. I don't think, I know I'm not going to be part of Plan A to provide $3 million for the space. So I don't, if that's my vote there, I don't know why I'd ask administration to spend a bunch of time and effort looking into this and then bringing it back to the committee where I know where I stand on it. So that's just my perspective.
Well, to clarify, I'm not asking them to come up with a funding source right now. I'm asking them just to bring it back so that we can, like, we've now debated. Now we're into the debate upon whether or not this is feasible. And I was trying to avoid that debate this evening. And I'd rather have a grander discussion in the committee of the whole where we could actually go through and debate some of these items that you're bringing up. And that's all. That was all my intention.
Yeah, for sure. But we're just kicking it down the road. And if you can answer me where you think we could get $3 million from in the next 6 months, then hey, I'll be happy to go down that route. But unless you want to deplete the reserves or have a larger tax increase, I don't know other way. So if you can convince me that we've got the finances somehow to do this, then I'm with you. But if not, then I'm not gonna vote to ask administration to go down and do some work on something that we don't have the finances for.
Councillor Hendricks.
Interesting debate given the topic and given the agenda tonight. Seems to me that this item normally would move to the next stage, no matter what, and that would go to a committee of the whole meeting to have a conversation. If we're going to get into debate on what the town's city's finances are right now, nobody's prepared to have that debate, at least not that I'm aware of. So I think to be fair to the presenters and certainly to be fair to the process, that's the normal process, which we take it back to this COTW and then we could expand on it. I don't think we're asking our admin to do anything other than allow us to have a conversation about it, unless the COTW is happening right now, and then I'd be happy to start that conversation.
No, I just want to bring it back for the grander conversation with you, Councillor Hendricks.
Right. So,
Councillor Barnhart, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm just going to weigh in here on sending it to committee of the whole, because I do think we want to have a fulsome discussion there. I think what threw us off a bit, our CAO presented that he needed to do a lot of work on this before bringing it back. And I don't think that's what I'm asking for. I would just like to have a conversation about it to see if there's enough support to do anything further. So I think we can have it at the next CLTW. I don't think we need to wait until late fall because we're getting into the election time. And I'd rather have the discussion, see if there's enough support to take it to the next level. But I would not want a lot of work done on it at this time until we've had that discussion, which I'm not prepared to have tonight. And I don't think our administration is either.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, just a question for administration. I was just digging for our upcoming COTW topics and just wondering, if we bring this conversation to a COTW meeting, what is that time spent going to be replacing that was already planned on being discussed? Can administration, what are our priorities and how would we manage those priorities for the upcoming COTW meetings?
Yeah, that's a very good question. The reports that are due for the next COTW were due this morning. So it will lengthen that agenda, or it will remove an item. I don't have the agenda in front of me right now. You do say a key word, and that's priorities. I thought we were working off of the priorities, and so this one is certainly going to circumvent that. If we are back next week, we'll be coming back with nothing extra, so there won't be a recommendation. We have no other information. We'll come back with a copy of this presentation, and council can have the same conversation, I suppose.
Yeah, and that's the crux of my concern, is if the presenters don't have any time to, go and talk about some of the ideas that, Councillor Hendricks has done, and we're just taking this presentation and bringing it back. I know we haven't had a wholesome discussion tonight, but, the information will be the same, right? So that I'm kind of struggling with the hurry up timeline, struggling less with about bringing it back to committee of the whole for discussion, similar to what Councillor Hendricks said, that's a process, we could follow. But, what I'm struggling with is what COTW and when, because there are other things that were in queue before this issue, come in front of us. And granted, we have a arts feasibility study tonight, and we just struck a steering committee on the arts. So now we're introducing a third conversation there. And, Mayor, you didn't want to hear debate, but where my head is at is, talk to the steering committee and get involved in that, see where this might fit in the bigger picture, right? That's where my head's at right now. So.
Yeah, this was sort of the conversation I was hoping to have at COTW. Councillor Stout, followed by Councillor Danlock.
Yes. My thinking is too that the normal process that we would follow with something like this is we bring it back to COTW so we can have that fulsome discussion that we're not going to have tonight, and issues of budgeting and could be addressed at that point. I'd like to see it sooner rather than later. I recognise that it will take time to gather the necessary extra information we need to make some of those decisions. My question then becomes: is there any scope for a special COTW meeting? Or
that's always a possibility,
because that's something that might get us around this is an emergent issue, right? This is something that we didn't plan for. That provides an opportunity that we may or may not wish to explore, is really what and we need to have that discussion as to whether or not we want to explore it, or at least I do, and I would like to have it with the rest of council, and okay. At a fairly quick pace, so that we can make an informed decision. So I'm kind of lining with Councillor Barnhart, although I accept that, yeah, we need to add some more information to this before we can progress further.
All right, Councillor Danlock, that'll close off round one.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. I share Councillor Monkoff-Swain's position on the finance part of it and his concern about administration doing some work. I don't want to see administration do a bunch of work on this if it's not going to go anywhere. I understand that, but can you please clarify the actual motion itself? Because Sam has an interpretation, his statements were based on his interpretation of the motion, and I'd really appreciate exactly knowing what the motion is, because if it is the way I think it is, I'm inclined to vote against it at this point based on Councillor Monkoff-Swain's comments earlier. But my council colleagues looking for some more information, a chance to debate it, committee of the whole. I understand what they're asking to do. So could you please clarify the motion to know exactly what I'm voting on? I'm not trying to be critical here. I just want to understand where Sam's coming from, and also with other councilors looking for a chance to have a discussion. But a discussion I'm okay with, but I don't want the administration to do any work on this until we have some idea where we stand as a council to debate any further. So could you please clarify the motion as you had mentioned moments ago, please?
My motion is to accept the report as information and bring it back to a committee of the whole meeting so council can have a fulsome discussion about how we want to deal with this item. I don't know how we got down the rabbit hole trying to fund it. Okay. I'm with the other council members. I want to be able to have a discussion, and I want to be able to take a decent amount of time to do it, because we have taken a lot of time in this meeting that I didn't anticipate, to even talk about having a discussion. So
Okay,
that's where I'm at.
So to clarify, if I may, Mayor Stewart, the motion, the way you interpret it, is bring back the committee of the whole at the future, but have no work done by administration between now and that discussion. Some committee of the whole down the road.
Well, don't kid yourself. Administration is going to have to do a little bit of work on this.
I understand.
Even if it's just preparing the report and bringing it back and doing a couple of quick things. Like, this is going to cause work for administration.
I understand. So if CEO Schwartz could identify how much work he thinks we need to do, I want to avoid that until we have some kind of political idea and any will we're going any further. I am of the position as Monkoff Swain regarding where the money's going to come from, and I have a concern with that, using public funds. So again, trying to avoid debate. I apologize for that, but I want to clarify what we're actually voting on. Thank you.
Voting on a discussion, but CAO, you got a comment on that or no? No.
You want me to comment on it? No, I didn't hear a question.
Okay. So we'll go opening up round two, and we're going to make this really brief and then call a question. Councillor Monkoff Swain, followed by Councillor Van Nieuwkerk. If anybody else wants on the list, do it now, because unless you're on before Councillor Monkoff Swain is finished speaking, we're going to call that question. So.
Yeah, thanks. So let me clarify. I appreciate if we want to have a conversation after, and I heard some councillors say this isn't the time to debate, and fine, so let's have that conversation at CRTW. But then I heard Councillor Stout say, I'm waiting, I want more information from administration. So that's two different things. I think if council wants administration to look into this, to dive into this and bring back all the information around how we'd fund it and all that sort of stuff, then that's the full timeline that was initially talked about. If it's just, let's talk about it as this group, because we don't want to talk about it here, then adding it on to next week's agenda, fine. But the expectation is that there's no new information. We're just debating it. So that's I'm not quite clear on. Seems some people want more information. Some people just want a chance to sit down and talk about the information that's in front of us. So I would like some clarification on what option that is, because that will obviously determine my vote here.
Right now, I just want council to be able to have a discussion on whether this is an idea we want to proceed with, and then how we want to go forward. So if it's administration bringing back a bunch of information, if it's spinning it off to the steering committee, or it's killing it outright, that's the discussion that needs to be had. And that's the discussion I'm trying to get to tonight. But everybody keeps clouding this issue.
Well, but why wouldn't we just have that discussion tonight?
Well, because this is supposed to be a 10-minute thing that's not taking an hour.
Yeah, so we kick it an hour down for the next meeting. We just have the same conversation for an hour there.
Councillor Van Nieuwkerk.
Yeah, thank you. Been trying to collect my thoughts a little bit around this and try and put some closure to things. The logistics are clouding my mind before I put the closure to that. I found our upcoming list for COTW, and we are 5, maybe 6 items deep on June 15th. Then we have an item on the consent agenda tonight that cancels July 20th, which kicks us into August 17th Committee of the Whole. When I look at all of those things, the meeting preparation that has went in, is based upon our priorities, and it's based upon the priorities that council has been working on for quite some time. I can't say with any more authority that I unequivocally support the arts conversation in Beaumont. I asked the mayor to be, the council member on the Beaumont Arts Council. I supported the studies that we're doing. I support, the groups in Beaumont where I can. I support the arts conversation, and I want a facility built as bad as anyone else does in Beaumont. What I don't want is to rush a conversation, and what I don't want is to rearrange our priorities that we've worked very hard on, next week to ram a presentation in when we're not going to be prepared. Because if administration doesn't do some work and answer some of the questions that have been raised tonight, for me, I'm in the same spot. And that would be, if council supports more work, then council will have to have that vote to support more work or not. And we've had a half of the discussion already tonight. So my support, I'm going to have to vote yes or no, and my support isn't there to bring it back to next week's committee of the whole meeting. And I know your motion says a future committee of the whole meeting, but that future committee of the whole meeting could be August, or it could be, I don't even actually know that we have a September one because of the election calendar, right? So the committee of the whole meetings that we have available right now, in my view, is one, and that would be August 17th. If that happened, there's time for the presenters to catch up with the steering committee and see where this falls into place in the broader arts conversation. I do see a facility like this having the possibility of being a part of a solution in Beaumont, with a big facility and a smaller facility, but the funding questions are there for me as well. So anyways, lots of thoughts there. I don't see anyone else's hands up, so I guess you'll call your question.
Yeah, so actually, based on that comment, I'm going to split this motion. I'm going to do one motion to accept this report as information, and then a second motion, because I still wanted this discussion to come back. But I'm specifically going to bring it to the committee of the whole in August, unless we call a special sooner. But that's where we're going to go. So first motion, I'm going to split this motion. So the motion to be voted on at this point is to accept this report as information. All the question, all in favor. And that carries unanimously. Second motion, to bring this item back for a broader discussion at the August committee of the whole meeting. Discussion on the motion. Councilor Swain, and then we'll call this vote.
Yeah, so just you table the motion, right?
Sorry?
Just clarification. Some people voted. I want to raise my hand, and so I just want to be clear. Did you call the vote, or did you table the motion?
No, I called the motion and then called for discussion, and people jumped the gun on the question. So we'll call the question again in a minute.
Okay, so can you just clarify, in order for me to get there, are you expecting administration to do a bunch of work to bring information back, or is this a chance for us to have the discussion as council with the same information in front of us?
Oh, yes.
My expectation is we'll have this discussion with some of the same information in front of us, and I would hope that there would be a little bit of work done on it between now and then to clarify some of these issues that were brought up today. But I will have that. We can clarify that with the CAO later. Councilor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, that level of work is where my vote is at. If we're going to have this same discussion again on August 17th and administration pens the report and adds it onto the agenda, then then we're there. But the level of work that would need to be done to answer a bunch of the questions that have been brought up tonight, because why wouldn't you want to do that pre-work ahead of time if we've already had those concerns have already been raised? That becomes the issue of priorities again for me. And administration is working very hard on all the things we've already tasked them to do. I do know that this is an emerging issue, and we do have room for those. But
Councilor Hendricks.
Your worship, in a COTW, we'd have Mr. Dollar available. I'm sure Mr. Dollar wouldn't have to spend a minute of his time prior to that meeting to have the conversation at the meeting as to where we would be with the various options that we've just discussed. He'd have the fiscals, he'd have the opportunities, he'd have the reserves. He'd be able to let us know where we're at in terms of the long-term fiscals that we're looking at, given everything else that's moving here in terms of pieces. Any kind of loan guarantees, what works or doesn't work for leaseback guarantees, whatever the province allows a municipality to do. I think those are on his fingertips. I mean, and that's the kind of conversation we have. And I think in short order, we'd have a up or down, yes or no. Do we want to keep moving? I don't think we're doing a full thesis on this thing. We just want to have the conversation about, you know, where's the reality of us fiscally today, and what could we do? And he'd give us his opinions, and that's I think where it would end. So up or down. So if he was here tonight, I'd start asking questions tonight.
All right. Call the question. All in favor? That motion is passed 4-3. Councillors Daniluk, Van Newkirk, and Monkoff Swain in opposition. Mayor Stewart, Councillor Barnhart, Councillor Hendricks, and Councillor Stout in favor. Thank you very much. All right, so appreciate all the hard work and discussion on that item. I know it probably wasn't what the answer you were looking for tonight, but it's the best we can do at this at the time, and we'll see what we can do to bring this back. So thank you to the presenters for coming in tonight and bringing this.
Thanks very much for having us, Mayor Stewart.
All right, so that brings us to, we might as well just keep on going. Item 8A, Performing Arts Feasibility Study.
Good evening, Your Worship and members of council. The recommendation before you this evening is that council receive the updated Performing Arts Feasibility Study as information. Of course, this is continuing work from 2020 that administration has been doing with RWDI Air Inc. on a Performing Arts Feasibility Study. At the Committee of the Whole meeting February 19th and 21, administration provided the draft study for information, and direction was given to further explore options at the CCBCC location as part of this work. The follow-up work then looked at the Mary Winspear facility in Sydney, BC, which houses the Charlie White Theatre and a community hall, to determine if that example would be feasible at the CCBCC site. The report is attached in your package. That report discussed the scope of the program, site limitations, options, operational best practices, and cost estimates for a building program. Our WDI examined 3 scenarios for that site. One was expansion of the current building to the east, expansion to the west, both to incorporate a theater addition. And the third scenario would be an option to renovate the existing hall to accommodate a theater. I've got Mr. Rick Schick with us this evening, and he's got a brief PowerPoint, and we'll be happy to go over it with council. If we can let him in, City Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll just let him in now.
Assuming he's still there.
Excellent. He's in the meeting.
Hi, Rick. Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me? I hope. Yes.
Yeah,
no?
have you?
Great. Good. You have nightmares about Zoom, and it doesn't work at the most critical time.
It's all yours, Rick. You can take it away on your slides there.
Okay, good, good. Okay, next slide. So what this exercise is to do is to look at developing a performing arts space adjacent to the community center, and using the Charlie White model, the Mary Winspear. Next slide. Okay, well, before I actually go into this, let's just review what the Charlie White Theater is. It's part of the Saanich Peninsula Memorial Community Center, basically. Called the Mary Winspear Center now. And it's been a hall for from the 30s until now, and it was renovated some time ago, and the theater was added at that time. So it's deceiving when you look at the theater, is that because the theater itself is a standalone, it uses the some of the shared spaces within the Mary Wynn Spear Center to actually to function. The lobbies, the bars, the loading dock, the washrooms, things like that. And that what that does effectively is reduce the square footage of the space that that you have to build. So 3 development options. One on the east side of the building, and we'll look at some drawings in a minute. One on the east side of the building. This is the smaller of the 2 spaces each side of the community center. There is just enough space to do it, but the downside of it is you lose 50 parking stalls to do that, which is considerable for this site. But it is doable. The other design challenge is to control the or to provide the emergency exiting for the multi-purpose space in the center. Right now, they spill out into a corridor, come lobby, and then from there out into the parking lot. If we don't, there isn't really enough space to provide that exiting. So we would have to turn that exiting and for it to come out to both ends. Now there could be some code issues there. A code consultant would have to be consulted to make sure we can do it. I'm pretty sure it's doable. We just have to figure out a way to do it. Again, the problem is that there isn't a lot of space, extra space between the building and the property line in there. The second option is on the west side. Now there's more room on the west side, and there's option A and B on the west side. The issue on the west side is the senior center. It is in the way, so to speak. The two options are to remove the senior center and incorporate it into the theater lobby that we're going to build, or the other option is to build to the north of the senior center and leave it there. The downside of option 2 is it increases the cost because you have to increase the cost for the senior center and allow for it. The second, and of course, is demolition. The second option 2A, there's enough space to do it, but you lose the profile of the theater on the street, and it makes it harder to see. And unfortunately, it's on the service side of the community center, which is positive in one way. It means that you've got access to the catering kitchen and all those other things. But what it means is it's getting the audience off the street to the space is kind of glitchy. But all three options are doable. Next slide. Now, if you go this route and develop this, there are some shared spaces that you can use in the community center. It would take some renovation, but not a lot. The theater offices could be in there. Overflow washrooms. We need a lot of washrooms for theaters because you've got a lot of impact usage over a short period of time before the show, and particularly at intermission. But so by using those washrooms, facilitating those washrooms in the center, you would need to build less washrooms in the new development. The catering activities, site services, building services, and custodian areas, all those things are shared spaces and will reduce your costs. Next slide. You have to excuse my rough drawings. I'm not an artist, to say the least. But you can see this is the development option on the east side, and you can see you're sandwiched right up against the property line. pretty close, a few feet, and you're sandwiched right up against the building. One of the positive things about this kind of layout is it reduces the gross up factor, because your circulation is very, very simple, because you're in one line. You don't have a lot of circulation, and that would reduce your costs. I think we reduced the circulation from the last building program from 65% to 40%, and in fact, in practice of design, you might even be able to reduce it even more. Next slide. This is option 2. So this is taking over the senior center. You would have to build more lobby space to accommodate a new senior center in there, and you can see it works. You've got a lot more space on the side. You could actually expand out a bit more if you needed to. Again, very efficient circulation, because we're all in the line again. And the next slide. This is 2A. So this is keeping the senior center where it is, and then building onto that grassy part of the on the northwest side of the community center. And you can see that the theater is set back from the street, so it loses its profile. You might have to add another little extension of the lobby that takes you along the side of the community center out to the front door, so that would be your sort of front door entrance to the theater, to the lobby. The circulation space again would be quite efficient, because you're cramming it into a very small space, and we're talking about a very much more modest seating capacity. And the next slide. This is the building program. Gross up at 45%. That could come down. Figure somewhere in the neighborhood of 20,000 square feet, maybe a few thousand square feet less than that. And the next slide. Based on construction costs now, let me grab that file, so I've got it here, and I can speak to it with. Anyways, there's an investment consulting company in Toronto that gives construction costs for various types of facilities across the country, various centers. They set the construction costs for theaters in Edmonton at $485 to $785 a square foot. And so we've used $500 a square foot for construction costs. Again, that could come down a bit, and you could save some on construction costs. The other thing is professional fees and disbursements. We usually figure about 16% for architects, structural, mechanical, electrical engineers, cost consultants, code consultants, geotechnical, theater consultants, and acoustaticians in there. But you've got some wiggle room there as well. And the next slide. It's possible, it's possible to renovate the multipurpose hall in the center into a theater. But theater requires a very specific design elements to make it successful. So there would be a lot of compromises that you would have to make to renovate the space into the thing, and it would still be costly. The other thing is that by renovating the space for theater use, because the theater requires certain requirements, it would shut out some of the current users that are using the space, because it would make the space unusable for them. And the next slide. This is a list of what I think is what you'd have to do to the room to make it work. You'd need a raised stage at the north end of the room. You'd have to You'd have to take out the temporary wall, the removable wall that divides the two space. Add retractable seating on the south end of the room. That's about a $400,000 hit. Increase the pre-function area on the east side to accommodate the lobby for 350 people. You'd have to add a co-check, a bar off, an office, additional washrooms in the pre-function area. You need a sound and lighting control room on the second floor on the south end of the space. You have to black out the windows in the space. You'd have to repaint the ceiling and the walls. You'd have a pipe grid over the stage and some of the front of house area. You'd probably have to upgrade the HVAC system to reduce the ambient noise in the room because it wasn't really designed for quiet operation. You'd have to add some acoustical material. Then you'd have to add some new construction at the north end of the center, about 3,000 square feet to house the dressing rooms, green room, workshop, loading dock, storage, that kind of stuff, and some kind of technical office. You'd add a technical package of lighting, sound, video, and draperies. And then you'd have to add electrical infrastructure to support all of that equipment. And we figure that that cost would be about $2.5 million to $3.5 million to make that renovation and make it work. And you can see though that by doing that, you would compromise the space for other uses. You might find that there's more uses in a certain thing, but but some of the current users would be shut out. And that's it. Paul told me I had to make this short. So, questions?
Do appreciate you coming in and doing this presentation for us this evening. As we are in the process of striking a steering committee, I believe the appointments are coming at the next council meeting. I think this work is probably going to wind up there for their review. But I will open it up for brief questions to members of council. But just as a reminder, this will be headed off for greater review by the steering committee that we're about to impanel at our next council meeting. Mr. Stewart, do you have any final comments before I open it up?
Thanks, Your Worship, and thanks, Rick. I was just going to say what you just said, Mayor Stewart, just that our intention would be to push this work as well as the previous work and everything before that to that steering committee to work through it and come to hopefully a recommendation, one or two, to bring back to council. So thank you.
Thank you. So we'll go with Councillor Stout, followed by Councillor Van Nieuwkerk and Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Your Worship. In accordance with your wishes, I'll try and keep this short and reasonably sweet. Mr. Schick, you referred to a more modest seating plan in option C, or the third option, the one where we're squeezing it in to the north, to the west, with behind the senior centre. Could you
It would be the same. It would be the same seating layout in each space. That would not change, and it would be retractable seating so that it could be pulled back so that you could use the space for other uses. That kind of adds a bit more of an economy to the development.
So just to be clear, so it's the same number of seats in each of the three options here? Okay, and I'm sorry, I didn't quite hear you. Did you say the seats would be retractable or wouldn't be retractable?
Well, in this model that we developed, they would be retractable because you would have the ability then to go back to flat floor. Yeah, and the theater groups then could do cabaret theater, they could do dinner theater. And the nice thing about if you were on the west side of the building, your catering kitchen is on that side, so the access from the catering kitchen to the theater chamber, audience chamber would be very tight, and so it's possible that you could do other forms of theater with it. The retractable seating is fairly pricey at $1,200 to $1,600 a seat, but the premium you pay is more like $400, because if you don't have retractable seating, then you have to have have to have port in place concrete risers. You still have to have seats at $400 a seat, $450 a seat. You have to have all the electrics that power all the safety things. You have to have handrails. So although retractable seating appears to be expensive, the premium isn't. And what you're doing is you're buying additional space for a very little bit of money.
And additional functionality, therefore, as well.
Absolutely.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. I saw something quite similar in Halifax Library.
Right. Yes.
A couple of years ago. That's the sort of.
It is, but probably it would be a much better system. The retractable seating comes from a sports environment, and they tended to be noisy and uncomfortable and not very good seats. But because of the economics of developing theaters, it's become a much more advanced technology, and so we're seeing all kinds of really interesting retractable seating. We're even seeing it now curved sections of seats that retract.
Okay, thank you. Can I ask one other question?
Sure.
We lose, I think you referred to losing about 50 parking spaces in the first option where we build it on the east side of the theatre. What's the total capacity for parking there, and is there a recommendation for the size of the car park for a theatre of this size?
That's always been a sticking point. I can tell you what, at 350 seats, yeah, you're going to need 152 parking stalls for a sold-out house. Now, losing 50, you're losing, a third of your parking there. There would be street parking. You could develop parking at the.
I'm gonna pull us back up to the 30,000-foot level, because we're into detailed design work and design questions, and the reality here is this is headed off to the steering committee to be reviewed for them to come back with recommendations.
Quite understand.
While I find the conversation surrounding parking stalls and the technology involved interesting, it's not a decision that's going to be made by this council tonight. So.
I agree. I just want to inform myself on what the pros and cons of the various options were. Thank you, Mr. Schick. I appreciate you.
Appreciate that. So yeah, let's pull this back up to the 30,000 foot level.
Can I just ask, Mr. Suter, do we know what the current parking? How many parking stalls are in the around the centre?
Through your worship, to Councillor Stout, I don't know that off the top of my head. No.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Newkirk, followed by Councillor Barnhart.
Yeah, thank you. Just more of a comment than a question. On page 10 of 174 up in the RFD, I just wanted to bring forward one of the pieces that had stuck out for me. Even before we just had the last conversation, I had this written down coming into tonight, and that was, a theater space must be large enough to support future growth and quality events. There is a strong case to be made that an inappropriate sized theater, either too small or too large, will stifle growth and discourage attendance by the population and use by community groups. The analysis that the Beaumont Society of the Arts has undertaken confirms a 350 to 400 seat theater is the correct size for the community. So, what that says is not 150 and not 600 is what the Beaumont Society for the Arts has been able to determine so far around theater size. So, as I was looking through the options in the diagrams and such, I was trying to imagine what that space would look like. And I had a look through the Mary Winspear, and I looked closely at the Lougheed and Camrose and such, and used those to kind of gauge my vision. But, 150 is too small and 600 is too big is the, what kept resonating for me in this conversation. So, just wanted to bring that comment forward. Thank you.
Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the presentation. My question, though, is aimed more at the administration, and I think Mr. Suter. Question about which reports are actually going to the steering committee, because I know when I read this report, the RFD, I was a bit confused because it said the attachment was named the Performing Arts Feasibility Study. When I went and read it, I realized that's the addition of the Beaumont Community Center piece. So right now I have two different reports. I have the feasibility study from the first time, and then I have this report, which is specifically around the Beaumont Community Center. So I just want to be really clear. What is the steering committee going to see? And my second question, I might as well ask them both at the same time, is what is your best guess in terms of a timeline, or at least what direction is this committee going to be given as to when to come back to council with a recommendation? And I understand things don't always go the way we want them to, but what is your hope there?
Thanks for the question. Through your worship to Councillor Barnhart. The committee's going to see all of these, both of these reports and anything else that we deem to be necessary to provide them or they ask for, as far as any planning documents, other master plans, anything else that we can find. I think in order for it to have the success to get where we want to go, they have to have access to everything that we've done to date. So yes, they will see both of these. This is a continuation of the first report because the direction was to specifically target the CCBCC site for more review. And the second piece is we've got our applications in. They're coming back for nomination official council on the 22nd of June. And we're just setting up terms of reference now and the schedule. And hopefully we've got something by fall, early fall. That would be the intention, optimistically, I would say at this time.
And just a final question. My experience with groups like the task that we put in front of this group is without facilitation, they will have difficulty. So is there a plan for facilitation? Is someone being earmarked from the administration to do that? Or is there going to be an outside consultant doing that? And I guess part and parcel of this, is the consultant available to them as well?
Yes, there will be facilitation through administration. We've got a couple people at various disciplines that will be available to the committee. And we're looking at a budget to go along with that would potentially be used for any external, either consultation, conceptual designs, civil looks, all that sort of stuff.
Thank you for that, Mr. Suter, and best of luck on that process.
Councillor Danlick.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Thank you, Mr. Schick and Mr. Suter for the presentation. One quick question, please, if you don't mind. If I missed it, I apologize, but I'm looking at page 3 of the attachment, 6.0 capital cost estimate, essentially $13 million. I'm not seeing a second or third number for the other two options. Is this the option to the east side of the CCBCC, or is 13 million no matter which option we take? Just to clarify, if you wouldn't mind. You may have missed that point. I may have missed it. If I did, I apologize. But please clarify if 13 million, it's all three options, or is it option whichever, please?
It would be for either any of the options, roughly. Give or take, plus or minus. You know, it's a real high end number, but just to give us some idea. But as I said, it's possible that we could get those construction costs down per square foot. Fees could come down, those kinds of things. Unfortunately, right now, you wouldn't want, I don't know what's like in Alberta, but on the West Coast here, boy, a sheet of plywood's like $90.
Thank you for clarifying. So the purpose of this report and the steering committee, it's 13 million, give or take, for all three, each of the three options. Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Stewart. I'll yield the floor.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. So that's the end of round one. Councillor Stout, your hand's still up. Did you have another comment?
No, I just didn't take it down. I apologize.
Okay. So member of council willing to move to accept this report as information. Councillor Danlick.
So moved, your worship. Thank you.
All right. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? And Councillor Stout, there you are. That carries unanimously. I do appreciate the presenters coming in tonight to give us this update, and look forward to seeing what comes back from the steering committee. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, at this time, we'll take a quick 5. Councillor Margot Swain is having a technical problem. We will see him get back online with us shortly. In the meantime, we will continue with item 8B, fire services, service enhancements. Mr. Cook.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, and good evening to members of council. Again, it's a pleasure to be here with you this evening. Tonight, administration is before you seeking approval for the capital project or purchase of a mini pumper for the Beaumont Fire Service. A mini pumper is a specialty or specially designed apparatus that is typically built on an F-550 or similar cabin chassis. This type of unit is capable of delivering water from not only a municipal water supply, but also a static water source, and that is, of course, delivering that to a fire. These units often improve travel time for responders as they are smaller, lighter than a traditional fire engine. Beaumont's growth, coupled with the need to meet the intent of both the Alberta Building Code and Fire Code, are the two primary drivers behind tonight's request. As one of Canada's fastest growing communities, city growth is now pushing onto our outer municipal boundaries. Both the Elan and Les Rives subdivisions provide excellent examples of our current outward movement. As growth continues, our fire service is taxed with greater travel distances, the requirement to traverse more intersections, as well as the addition of more motoring and foot traffic along our roadways. This will not only prove challenging during daytime response hours, but also during evenings and weekend hours when our dedicated core group of 35 volunteers provide our primary response services. As our community grows, so too does the interest to increase population densities within our current subdivisions and of course future subdivisions. As with many communities within the province, reduced or zero lot lines are often engaged to elevate densities, allowing communities to reach predetermined targets, which they may be obligated to. Within the city of Beaumont and our subdivisions, we've seen a shift to this type of development. In efforts to support Beaumont's continual growth and development, our fire service has continuously endeavored to meet response time requirements of being on scene in under 10 minutes, 90% of the time. This is inclusive, and it's important to understand that this is inclusive of all areas within our municipal boundaries. Challenged by this requirement, the city's fire service has continued to enhance response efforts to improve on-scene times, allowing the city to continue with our current rate and type of development. The purchase of this type of a unit, a mini pumper, will further the city's ability to maintain our current level of growth. And of course, in addition to improving response time to fires, this apparatus will also support responses to incidences in our rural areas and potentially motor vehicle collisions and rescues when such a call is received. Fire Service Administration has researched the availability of demonstration and stock units that would meet the needs for our city, of course, reducing the overall cost or purchase cost of the units, and we've determined that many units are available now. With the addition of this new apparatus, administration has realized that the replacement of engine 2, which is due in 2025, may be delayed as the unit will be available or would be able to be moved into a reserve role for a period of time. The delaying of this replacement will defer the use of an estimated $650,000 to purchase a suitable replacement. Administration is requesting the approval of this purchase for $290,000 Canadian to be funded from allocated 2021 grant funds. And of course, as always, I'd be happy to answer any questions that council may have. Thank you.
Appreciate the presentation tonight, Director Cook. This is, I alluded to it the last time we were here when we were talking about the Protective Services Report, and the HERF requirements have always been near and dear to my heart. And so being able to meet those is one of the, being able to meet those or not is one of the greatest threats that we have to our economic development efforts in our city. If we can't meet those, it adds exponential costs to buildings. In order to be able to build in Beaumont, it's going to cause major issues with our land use bylaw. And so I'm in support of your ask this evening because we need to meet, quite simply, we need to meet those requirements. So I will open it up to questions from members of council, and then we will move forward. Councillor Danlock.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. Thank you, Mr. Cook, for your presentation. I wholeheartedly support this idea. I know myself, I'm a big proponent of protective services and fire and police, as all councillors are, I believe. Our primary job is to protect our citizens. Building sidewalks are important, so is rec centers, but safety is our citizens very important. And I believe this pumper truck, based on the report you provided us, is an important component of fire safety for our citizens. Now, I do have a question in the sense that I need to find out, I know it's a good idea. I understand the use for the vehicle, it increases response times, but it's the first I've heard of it is actually coming with the RFD this evening, asking us to spend $290,000, which I think is a good investment based on your presentation. But the question is, why are we hearing about it at this point as opposed to earlier in the year, perhaps back at budget? Not being critical, just asking how we got to this point now instead of earlier in the year. And I have a second question once you answer the first one, if you could, please. Thank you very much.
Certainly, excellent. Thank you through your worship to Councillor Daniluk. For a number of years, City of Beaumont Fire Service Administration and our membership has been endeavoring or being creative, if you will, with adjusting our service and our type of response and how we respond to help eliminate or alleviate the need for additional purchases and, of course, the addition of staff. We understand costs, we understand the impacts of that. Examples of steps we've taken to date include pre-alerting through our dispatch services, service provider to allow firefighters to respond quicker, and a pre-alert, so not quite understanding what they're responding to, just knowing that there's a call coming in to help expedite those response measures. Further to that, of course, is training, and that's the training of qualified operators so that our staff are not waiting at the station to respond, waiting for an operator to come in and staff a truck and be able to drive it to respond. We've felt that we've exhausted many of those opportunities, and we've gone down these avenues for the past few years, and we're now at a point where, with our growth, in order to meet that, we've had to be innovative. That this presentation or this purchase would be, that will allow us to continue to support growth and, of course, meet the needs of our residents who expect the fire department to be on scene every time. To your point, again, we've simply exhausted or began to exhaust all these avenues. This is an opportunity that we've been discussing now for a few months through administration, and the time was felt that now is right to bring it forward, as we do have units available and, of course, the availability of these funds.
Thank you. And my second question, you probably answered half of it already. If you don't mind, I'll ask it in full if you don't mind. The second question revolves around the fact that my understanding, this piece of apparatus will allow our 4 full-time firefighters to respond to a bona fide fire call sooner than having to our current situations. Can you clarify if my understanding is somewhat correct, which is why I wholeheartedly support this request and this motion to approve? Thank you.
Excellent. Through your worship to Councillor Daniluk again. This apparatus supports all of our staff, not only full-time, but our volunteer staff as well. In fact, I would wager to say that there is more of a benefit from this apparatus, or pardon me, employing this apparatus into our station for our volunteer members in the evening hours than there is during the daytime. Our response time or turnout time during the day is approximately 120 seconds. From the time a page is received, a firefighter gears up, you're in the apparatus, wheels turning is 2 minutes. That is what's called our shoot time. In the evening hours, what we find is our volunteers, when the tones go off, respond from home, as any traditional volunteer would, of course, respond from home to the fire hall, gear up, receive the information on the call, then man the apparatus, and of course respond. This apparatus would allow our first 2 or 3 individuals in that door to quickly staff the apparatus. A Class 5 license is all that's needed. There's no air brakes, so it does enhance our ability to allow more individuals to operate this vehicle. And of course, with a quicker response time, to get our membership after 4:30 every day, and of course on weekends and in evenings, out the door faster, responding quicker to incidents. So again, to your point, Councillor Daniluk, not only does this support our full-time membership, but all of our members 24 hours a day.
So clearly, thank you, Mr. Cush. Clearly, this enhances the safety of our citizens. I'm all for it. Thank you for your presentation. I'll yield the floor, Mayor Stewart. Thank you.
Thank you. Speakers list is Councillor Markoff Swain, followed by Councillor Van Newkirk, followed by Councillor Stowe.
Thanks, Worship. My question is around the funding source. So I understand grants. I heard that much, but I'm curious about what's left, what's remaining. Obviously, we just recently provided a significant portion from our grants out west, and we're told at that time from Mr. Dowler that we were basically very low, if not right at the bottom. So I'm just curious on where, which grant stream this comes from, and if we could have an update on what that would mean for our grants going forward.
Excellent. Thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Monkoff-Swain. Unfortunately, I don't have that exact answer for you. I'm going to ask if Mr. Dowler or Mr. DeBlanco are on. I see CAO Schwartz has joined us. I may be able to provide a bit better of an answer than I could.
See you.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't. I do know that Curtis DeBlanco was moving some money around so that it worked out that we could consume all of the rest of our grant money, but I'd have to get that answer back to you.
Yeah, and I guess my point is, and I'm not debating the value of the units and all that sort of stuff. I recognize administration wouldn't bring this forward if you didn't have the money in grants. Obviously, it's there. I would just be curious on if we could get an update on where we are. This is the second time that we've tapped into grants outside of the budget process, and I'm okay with that. I'll support this. Just if we could get an update on where we are with those things. We obviously had another ask earlier today, so we've still got half a year left, and I'd be curious on where we're at with our grants. So if administration could prepare that back during the next update, that'd be appreciated. But for me, I support this, and that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Councillor Newkirk.
Yeah, thank you. A couple of questions. I think there was a new piece of information in the preamble information around the purchasing of this unit being able to, I don't know, make it so that the Unit 2 replacement can be delayed. Can you expand on that, Mr. Cook, please? I think that was new information for us.
Certainly, through your worship to Councillor Van Newkirk. Following NFPA, National Fire Protection Association standards, every frontline apparatus is required to be replaced or completely overhauled at 20 years of age. When our apparatus are approaching that time, or pardon me, when fire apparatus approach that time, it allows administration to have a good look at the apparatus, to scan the environment and determine or adjust the equipment and the capabilities of a fire service. Understanding, of course, that budget constraints may be an impact, of course, to any service. Moving Engine 2 in 2025 to a reserve role would by no means hinder or impair our frontline capabilities of delivering copious amounts of water onto a fire at any time. In fact, it would actually further enhance our abilities, as that unit in a reserve role would be able to replace any frontline apparatus when it goes down for servicing. So in theory, it would add an extra pump and give us an additional piece of equipment to be maintained, or pardon me, an additional piece of equipment to replace a unit that is out of service for maintenance. That to the estimated $650,000 that it would cost to replace that unit today is a very educated guess. Of course, with the changes to our dollar, of course, that only needs to go up by that time. Also keeping in consideration our storage or our facilities to store all of our equipment, so the fire hall, of course. We felt that if we were to delay this piece of equipment, the replacement, if that was the wish of council in 2025, we could do so, and we could do so safely, or maintaining the safety of our community and, of course, the service delivery of our fire service. I hope I've answered your question.
Yeah, I think in short answer, it helps the logistics of things.
That's a quick answer. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Thank you. I appreciate that. Just a question on the staffing costs up to 115,000 per year operationally. Would that include the, in the last update you just provided, there was some narrative around training costs and how training costs were allocated year over year and such. I'm assuming that there's going to be training costs sunk into this unit as well, as it's a new thing that people will be training on. Does that 115 include the training costs to get everyone up to speed, or is that 115 just annualized, with increased salary and training costs? Talk to me about that 115 and what the makeup is.
Certainly, actually, well, through your worship to Councillor Van Newkirk, actually, you hit the nail on the head. It is a combination of not only wages, but training costs, of course. Training for this type of apparatus would be conducted on our regular training nights. The anticipation would be prior to delivery, of course, all of our staff coming out, being orientated on the unit, have the opportunity to operate the unit, understand the bells and whistles, if you will, and be able to troubleshoot any issues that may arise while on a fire scene, so they quickly adjust it. Much of that would be captured already in our current lines. However, with the new piece of equipment, with enhancing our services, yes, yes, that $115,000 is inclusive of not only training, the additional training, but also staffing costs as well with the enhancement of our service.
Okay, thanks. Great answers. Well, I like it.
Thank you.
Councillor Stout.
Thanks. Through your worship to Chief Cook. Understand that the object of the exercise here is to reduce the HIRF response times, and you gave us a quick overview of, and it's also in the document, as to what that might mean in terms of volunteers arriving and having to gear up and get ready to go. I just want to understand, there's a reference to some of the existing appliances requiring a minimum of 4 crew. So is part of this the fact that the mini pumper would require a smaller minimum? I think you said when 2 or 3 people were available earlier. Is that, in other words, once I've got 2 volunteers ready to go, then we can send the mini pumper out? Is that essentially how we reduce that, or one way in which we reduce the HIRF time on average?
Through your worship to Councillor Stout, yes. This apparatus is much easier to operate. It's a simple apparatus, if you will, and the intent behind it is it could respond with a reduced staffing capacity to an incident quicker, understanding and knowing that further apparatus fully staffed are coming behind. So it would work in that way to help reduce our high intensity residential fire response time requirements.
Okay, great. Thank you. So I assume then we carry on monitoring HIRF times as obviously we're already doing. Do we? This might see. Do we have any way of knowing whether the mini pumper affected those or not? I guess is, if we were to go ahead with this purchase, do we then collect stats that say, yeah, that made the difference in that case, or is that we just see those stats those response times go down, or at least not up, and part of that is the mini pumper?
I said, through your worship to Councillor Stout, I can assure you that monthly our HIRF, or high intensity residential fire statistics, are monitored. I do it myself, pull reports on our response times, sometimes even weekly. The one unfortunate reality is we cannot plan any emergency that occurs within our boundaries. I truly wish we could. It would just be a wonderful thing. Unfortunately, we cannot. What we have done is we have looked back over the past 4-5 years at our peak times, our peak hours. When can we expect calls to come in? When do we normally see them? And quite honestly, it's typically between 5 and 7 p.m. in the evenings. That's usually when people come home, having dinner, things along those lines. This piece of equipment won't only offer us an improved response time during those times, but 24 hours a day, because it's there, it's available, unless of course down for maintenance. So I would be very confident in saying to Councillor Stout that we would see a direct improvement on our response times, given at any time a call is received for service, any time of day. And that is something that we will continue to monitor, not only weekly, but again on that monthly basis. And I'm certain when in the future, when I come back to council or the committee of the whole, be very happy to provide those numbers back to you folks.
Thank you. Okay, then that's exactly what I would have expected. But yeah, it's so acquiring this equipment reduces the response times generally, and there's no real question about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that brings comments and questions of round 1 to a close. I'm going to ask if there's, before we go on to round 2, if there's any I'm going to ask if there's a member of council willing to move that council approve the capital project fire services mini pumper in the amount of 290,000 with funding allocated from grants. Councillor Danlock.
So moved, your worship. Thank you very much.
Debate on the motion, further questions and comments, and then we'll call a question. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, I forgot to ask the very important question of, are we talking Ford, Chev, or Dodge? Thought I heard Ford. Thank you.
Councillor Danlock.
I'm not sure how to follow it up, actually, but that was a good one. Go Chevy. One quick question, Mr. Cook. How soon could we get this apparatus up and running here from Beaumont? If you mentioned that, I missed that. If you mentioned a certain date, you're expecting to have this apparatus up and running. Should we approve the motion this evening? Thank you.
Thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Danlock. In anticipation of tonight's meeting, an RFP has been drafted for a demo restock mini pumper. It is set to be released tomorrow at noon, with the intent for the unit to be delivered within 45 days. With the availability of these units on the ground at some manufacturers, again, we have conducted an environmental scan for this type of equipment. They are available, and I'm confident we'll have it here in that time.
Seeing no further requests, call the question. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you very much, Director Cook, for coming in this evening. I appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you very much, Your Worship.
Brings us to item 8C, COVID-19 updated recommendations. CAO and Director Cook.
Yes, thank you very much. I wrote a very brief report as we approach stage 2. A couple of things I want to highlight is all through the pandemic, we've been very consistent by following the provincial direction and all the health restrictions and the protocols. And with our reopening plan, we haven't veered away from that. We're still very consistent. At this point in time, we are still waiting for direction from the GOA on things like washroom protocols, facility dressing protocols. And I'll talk about what our recommendation here is in a second. So we've been told we would get those before June 10th. Still waiting for those, and it's June 8th. So we've taken a very patient approach to opening. There are some things that we have some options on, and we can talk about those in a second. So I want to go down to the recommendations that we're making. I had the spray park actually written in a different format when I included it in the report. And then on June 3rd, we received inconsistent clarification from the province. And we were June 3rd, sorry. So we were able to open the spray park. In the first draft I wrote, we had scheduled to have it open on June 10th. And that was because the GOA had told us that spray parks were consistent in the same category as an outdoor pool. So family cohort, maximum of 10, physical distancing was required. We then, after watching the news last Wednesday, saw that the Global News was doing their segment from the spray parks in Edmonton. So I reached out to our counterpart in Edmonton, and the direction they were given is that a spray park is the same as a playground, so that the city can decide on its maximum capacity and is welcome to open it up. So I verified that with 2 other municipalities, and that's where we ended up. So our spray park is open. As far as the commuter transit, it remains shut down, and our suggestion is we continue to leave it shut down until at least the post-secondary classes begin in September, or we revisit the decision when we bring back the on-demand proposal to council, which is coming back in July or mid-August, and we're just putting the finishing touches on that because that may affect computer service going forward. We are not getting any complaints about our computer service being down. If you recall, council provided some grant money to the Drive Happiness Group, and from what I understand, they've been doing a really good job of providing transportation for the 1 or 2 or 3 people. As far as council in-person meetings, our suggestion is that they remain virtual until 3 weeks after the province moves into stage 3. Stage 3 is quite likely going to occur, possibly going to occur at the end of June. If you remember, stage 3, the 14-day period starts when we hit 70% of Albertans 12 years of age and over that are vaccinated. Right now, we're sitting at 67%. So that quite likely could occur by the end of this week. Our 3-week delay, it's kind of a taking advantage of a situation with the summer break coming up, but also taking that extra level of caution and modeling that for our community. With our summer break coming, it lines up with that 3-week break. So what we're suggesting is that providing we move into stage 3, that we begin in-person meetings, the regular council meeting August 10th. As far as City Hall, we're recommending that it remains closed until stage 3. However, on June 28th, 29th, and 30th, we will open the doors, not necessarily advertising that, but for those people who show up to pay their taxes in person, we will have our signs up and we will have spots where people can have maximum occupancy. So we think that's just a little extra service that we can provide. If you recall, last year we were closed up tight at tax time. We never had any complaints. We were able to deliver that service to everybody. The last one is the Canada Day fireworks. They're scheduled for July 1st. And the events committee, I'm being told, and Councillor Hendricks, you can clarify this, that has been promoting multiple viewing sites throughout our community so as to stay under what are currently the outdoor social gathering numbers, which under stage 2 will be 150. There's quite likely the possibility that on July 1st, we will be into stage 3, so that that restriction won't be in effect anymore. A couple other comments I just wanted to make regarding the restrictions and our approach is it's very consistent with what our regional partners are doing. For instance, Edmonton, I spoke to them today. They're opening some of their facilities on Thursday, expecting, of course, the clarification to the change rooms and the washrooms first. They have not received that as well. Leduc is opening their facility on the 10th, but their indoor pool will remain closed because they've got to bring in more staff and they've got to train them. We're in the same predicament with laying off a number of our casual employees. Not all of them have come back. In fact, 3 of our 4 personal trainers have found work elsewhere, so we've got to do some recruiting ourselves. Spruce Grove's Tri-Leisure Center is opening on June 14th. Fort Saskatchewan is opening June 14th, and they have limited hours and closed on Sundays, and Strathcona is opening on June 14th. What we're proposing for our Beaumont Sport and Rec right now is to be wide open on June 17th, June 17th, which is giving us a week to get staff back orientated. That's if we meet the requisites on June 10th, and that's less than 60% and less than 500 in hospital. No brainer, we're going to do that. So we weren't entirely certain whether we were going to get there for June 10th. So we didn't, in hindsight, 50-50, we could have started bringing people back a week ago. But I talked to Paul this afternoon and we're prepared tomorrow to start bringing back as many people as we can so we can back that date up, provided we get the final recommendations from the GOA on the washrooms and the change rooms. For events, that's the last item I'll put on there. For special events, what we've been doing all this year is providing permits conditional to the date the event occurs and whether it fits within the provincial restrictions. So the groups that have been filling out those permissions have been great, and they've understood that we may have to pull them at the last second. We haven't had to do that. So anyway, I'll leave that. Those are some recommendations and some rationale on why we went that route, and I'll open up to any questions.
Thank you very much. Do appreciate the report, the presentation. Open it up to questions from members of council. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, thanks for the information, Mike. I wanted to go back at the BSRC conversation a bit, recognizing all of the changing and evasive recommendations, and you just acknowledge you're still waiting on, what was it, bathroom and change room recommendations and such. I guess first question would be, I assume, Devon, Leduc, and Edmonton would all be waiting on the same information?
Yes, I verified that too.
Yeah. this is more of a comment than anything, but one of the most challenging things that's happened during the pandemic with things opening and closing has been, different municipalities communicating in different ways and at different times. And recognizing the spray park as a great example of Beaumont waiting for information while they broadcast the news from the Edmonton site, and then, timely communications from administration to change their tune and get things organized. So one of the challenges has been, as Devon and Spruce Grove and Leduc put out their posts that things are opening, and Beaumont is still lagging in the communication timing. And I understand why, and you've explained tonight why, because you're waiting for answers. So I guess the comment is more around the timing of communications in the region and just knowing how connected residents are these days. The timing lags, be them for whatever reason that they occur, often land in the laps of council and the mayor, and getting tagged in posts, and then residents getting understandably frustrated for what turns out to be reasons beyond control, or reasons that need not be frustrating because everyone else is in the same boat anyways. So that's just the current state of affairs. And it's part of I've come to realize it's part of the gig, but it feels like we're in that situation more often than not. And I think as I reflect on it, it seems to be that the administration is taking their time to make the right decisions and being on the better side of 50-50 when you're gambling, because if you're gambling to open and you're bringing back the logistics of 30 staff, then you have you're gambling with 30 staff's wages for X number of days if the decision doesn't go in your favor, right? And logistically speaking, I think that taxpayers would want us to be on the better side of that decision. So anyways, it's a long-winded comment that I get it, and it's tough, but it doesn't make it any easier on the communications front. So that's really all I have to say around that. And then, the BSRC is the top of mind right now because everyone's excited to get in there. And hey, let's face it, we actually haven't had a proper grand opening for the facility yet, right? So, let's get that done one day too. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Newkirk. Councillor Stout.
I didn't expect to be next. Thank you.
Oh, sorry, you're the next one in the
restrictions
line.
on the BSRC, do those also apply to the or the removal of the restrictions, I suppose? Do they apply to the Ken Nicol and the community centre as well?
Yes, that's correct. We
So
have
they'll all be
scheduled in those buildings as well.
So they'll all be on exactly the same schedule, which is currently, if I understood you correctly, the 17th.
They're in different phases depending on the programming, so it wouldn't all necessarily be the 17th. As Paul and I talked this afternoon, we will quite likely have BSRC wide open, provided we get the facilities, the change orders for the facilities or the washrooms and the change rooms before the 17th.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you, Mayor. And my question was almost exactly the same as clarification that Councillor Stout has mentioned about the facilities opening. And what confused me is that your recommendations, you went through them all, but the facilities such as the Sport and Rec Center are not listed there. And just the clarity of knowing exactly what you just said, it may open, may not open. I get it. I get it that we're not sure. But we've taken an approach on many other things. So what are you saying is the approach? Just say it in one sentence for me, because I'm really not clear at all.
We are taking the approach to follow the provincial restrictions as they get communicated to us, and to open up our facilities as quickly as we can.
So facilities are different than any of these 6 other points.
No, they're the same as all of those. You're right. I missed the BSRC. Yeah, you're right.
Oh, okay. I read it 3 or 4 times because I think I'm missing something.
Yeah, no,
maybe for the record, it wouldn't hurt to have it in the minutes somehow, or somehow adjust this, because people will go back and look, and I can't keep it in my head. So that's why I look.
Actually, that's pretty funny, actually, now that I look back on it. Yep, that's exactly what I did.
Okay. Well, thank you for clarifying that. And I don't envy what you're having to keep up with. It's really daunting. Thank you very much.
Councillor Hendricks.
Your worship, thank you. Yeah, I guess given the region and the way we're organized with all the various municipalities all in the same hub and all somewhat getting some of the same information, I believe, out to our public. We've got the city of Edmonton put out their city attractions reopening information. I circulated that this morning to all, and they've got for facility openings June 10th to 13th. They've got Clairview, Commonwealth, Twigger, Meadows, community rec centers, fitness centers, and what have you. So we're just lagging a few more days behind that, right? The 17th by the previous Thursday, we should be in good shape. So, and we all have our own reasons why we're in these predicaments in terms of timing. And as we heard, staff and other things are they have to be different in every municipality, given the ability to bring staff back on very short notice. So I get it. And as long as we just get the word out, especially on the BSRC, lots of questions about that. We need to get that on the Facebook page, whatever. And just and with an understanding that it's staff related and AHS related. So that should do it. But by the 17th, we should have this behind us. So
We've already started communicating, but once we get a decision tonight, absolutely, we will blitz it.
Right on. Thanks.
Councillor Danluck.
Actually, Mayor Stewart, between Councillor Hendrick's last comment and CEO Swartz's answer, my question was pretty much answered, so I will withdraw the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I just do want to add my comments. I think we are operating coming to see the light at the end of the tunnel. And as we all know, the province has been a fan of moving the goalposts at the last second from time to time throughout this pandemic. So I appreciate the difficulties when we're still waiting for information from the province and opening our facilities. And so I would ask that our residents be patient with us as we come towards the end of this, as we come to the end. And I really do appreciate the work that our staff is working towards getting things open up as fast as they can. We're not dawdling behind it. So I really do appreciate that. Is there a member of council willing to move the recommendation that council endorse the Beaumont COVID-19 updated recommendations as presented? Councillor Hendricks. Sorry, you were on mute there, Councillor.
So moved.
Thank you. Further discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Which brings us to item 9A, Bylaw 1002-21, Emergency Management Bylaw Amendment for second and third reading. Is that Director Cook or UCAO? Oh, Director Cook.
My apologies. There we go. All right. Thank you again, Your Worship, members of council. Administration is before you again this evening, seeking all three readings for Bylaw 1002-21, our Emergency Management Amending Bylaw. As the local authority, the City of Beaumont is responsible for the direction and control of response to an emergency or disaster within municipal boundaries. On November 26, 2019, Council gave three readings to Bylaw 963-19. That was our new emergency management bylaw. Our new bylaw was a result of the province bringing forward new legislation requiring municipalities to create both an emergency management agency and committee. This is in addition to the requirement to meet predetermined training levels for staff. During a recent review, it was noted that our current bylaw 963-19 requires the identification of a chairperson for our emergency management committee. This requirement may be found in the province of Alberta's Local Authority Emergency Management Regulation, or LEMR. This emergency management amending bylaw ensures compliance with this requirement. No further updates or modifications with our emergency management bylaw is required beyond this one, and I would be happy to answer any questions that council may have.
You're on mute, Mayor.
You're on mute, John.
was doing so well tonight too. I'm making sure that wasn't happening. But yeah, as this is largely a housekeeping amendment to the current bylaw, just gonna, before we get into questions and comments, I'm gonna ask if there's a member of council willing to move first reading of bylaw 1002-21. Councillor Barnhart, I see you waving.
So moved, your worship.
Thank you. Questions on the bylaw? Councillor Hendricks?
Your worship, thank you. During the course that I attended in Bruderheim for this particular matter, the emphasis was on budgets and money. Just walk us through how budgets and money flow through this document.
Director Clerk, CAO.
Through your worship to Councillor Hendricks, I'm sorry, I don't quite understand the question. Can you?
Sorry. So the course I took suggested that one of the failings of these things is that there's no money that backs up the whole matter, and that there has to be an ability for this bylaw to write checks immediately and spend money immediately without having to go through some kind of approval process. Maybe just speak to that, if you could, for a minute, just to how this whole management bylaw flows in terms of cash.
Certainly, through your worship to Councillor Hendricks, and thank you for the clarification. I appreciate that. This bylaw is a requirement of the province of Alberta, and the rationale behind the bylaw is to create an agency, so that's city staff made up of many of our directors and such, as well as a committee. And the committee is made up of 2 members of council, our our director of emergency management and our deputy director of emergency management. In addition, it outlines the required training that's required for not only staff, but also for council as well. With respect to budgeting and financial, taking care or addressing financial impacts of an emergency or disaster should they occur, that would take place in our Emergency Coordination Center, and that would be done by our Director of Emergency Management, our CAO, and in consultation with members of our committee. Typically, financial thresholds are set for an emergency coordination center to operate within daily. That is something that is typical of most emergencies, and anything beyond that would have to be brought back to either the committee or, of course, to council. This bylaw really, to your point, really has no impact to any budgets right now or control of finances. That would be done again at the operational level in that emergency coordination center setting, should we need to activate again.
Right. So I guess I just want to make it clear to all who's potentially watching is that in the event of a situation, you have the authority by rule to be able to write the check without having to come back to council, no matter what the situation is. And I think that's important. And I think that's what I heard at the training session, that there has to be something written into this agreement, bylaw, whatever, that allows that to happen. But also that there has to be a budget approved by council for the committee to carry out a program for the promotion of the goals. And I'm assuming we've got some dollars set aside, that this has some cash to work with.
Right, thank you. Through your worship to Councillor Hendricks, we do have an operating budget, a small modest operating budget that covers off our emergency management program. That's some financial costs with regards to the purchase of needs for our ACC, as well as some training costs as well to help offset bringing in instructors or, of course, the cost of delivering instruction. Further to that too, and I'm sorry, I do not have the exact dollar figures, but the City of Beaumont does have a fund set aside, a reserve, to help address any emergency or to help cover the cost of a financial burden that an emergency or disaster would bring forward. Again, I'm sorry, I don't have that exact cost for you this evening. That would be something we'd have to seek from finance. Again, with regards to having to write the check, that is done at the ECC level by the Director of Emergency Management. And I don't know if CIO Schwartz would like to add anything to that, but I can assure you that that will take place should we have another activation.
The only thing I would add, and it's a really good question, Councillor Hendricks, and I know you're asking it so that the public is aware, is that we track every nickel in that ECC. And if you recall, when we stood up the ECC for COVID, what we did in the beginning was we spent money that we knew we had in our operating budgets, and then we did an estimate on what we thought we were going to need specifically for the emergency, in this case COVID, and we went back to council and said, can we set aside, and if you recall, the figure was $250,000, that we would then account for every one of those nickels up to the 250, and if we needed more, we would come back to council. So that was that for that event. And as Director Cook said, yeah, we also have small amounts of money to allow us to do training and those types of things throughout the year.
Right, and that's really my point. We have the horsepower if need to, depending on the situation. So I'm glad we're flexible, we're nimble, we can react. So thank you.
Okay, seeing no further requests to speak, call the question. All in favor of first reading? And that carries unanimously. Is there a member of council willing to move second reading of bylaw 1002-21? Councillor, it all cleared on me. Councillor Stout, you had your hand up.
I did have my hand up, yes. So moved, Your Worship. Second reading.
Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? That carries unanimously. I move that council unanimously approve moving to third reading of bylaw 1002-21, emergency management amending bylaw. Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, call the question. All in favor? And that carries unanimously. Is there a member of council willing to move third reading? Councillor Daniluk.
So moved, Your Worship. Thank you.
Discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that carries unanimously. Thank you to members of council for moving that through this evening and getting us compliant with the legislation. Thank you, Director Cook, for bringing that to us this evening and for sticking with us through the evening.
Hey, it's my pleasure.
Which brings us to item 10, councillor inquiries and reports. We'll start with councillor inquiries. Is there members of council wishing to ask administration questions this evening? Councillor Van Newkirk, followed by Councillor Daniluk, followed by Councillor Hendricks, followed by Councillor Barnhart. Councillor Van Newkirk.
Yeah, thank you. I'll try and keep it brief. I've made, excuse me, I've made some inquiries in the background as to the answers for these questions already, but I wanted to reiterate some of the answers that I got back. So the first question is around heavy truck traffic in Beaumont. There's been, with our construction happening on the east and west sides of Beaumont with road construction and subdivision construction and West 80 acres construction, there's bound to be more heavy truck traffic in and around Beaumont. Beaumont does have the heavy truck bylaw, and we do have road use agreements, I understand, that are set up with the trucking firms, but somehow some of the large truck traffic is sneaking through and going right through downtown and turning left and or right at the center of Beaumont at 50th and 50th. And one of the questions I asked that I knew the answer to was, is Bylaw and RCMP empowered to enforce what they need to enforce? And of course the answer is yes, but somehow some of this heavy truck traffic is still slipping through. So I guess my question for administration is, what more can be done to educate the construction outfits and subsequently the trucking outfits that are typically subcontractors and harder to manage, which I know. What more can we do to try and minimize what's happening? Because there's still heavy truck traffic that is slipping through despite the measures in place.
Yes, I can provide an overview, and then Director Cook is still on the call, and you can slide in whenever you'd like. And you're right, you referred to it, the road use agreements. Between planning and infrastructure, they determine what the best, if the road use agreement is required. And then if that's the case, the trucking company applies for it, the restrictions are put into place, the routes are designed. As far as we have some limited access with the loads on 243, 241, and even 510. So there's only certain ways that some of these trucks can get through our city. But outside of the road use agreements, what I would urge people to do is report those trucks to ME, to Protective Services. Obviously, the public's not going to know whether they got a road use agreement in place or not, but we do. We also have Trevor's out on a regular, Bosna's out on a regular basis, and he has the ability to talk to these truckers as well. If you recall, we had a big problem on 510 last year, the year before, and we set up a little stop there that helped. But I'll turn it over to the expert, and that's Mr. Cook.
Sorry, I was going to wait for the expert to come on. No, I joke. Sorry, my apologies. Through your worship to Councillor Van Newkirk, excellent question, and thank you for the opportunity to address it. I would like to share that we have had some concerns from residents along Range Road 241 who have also brought forward the concern of truck traffic. And to address those concerns, not only have we requested both the RCMP to go out and conduct extra patrols when able, we've also engaged our municipal enforcement team to conduct regular patrols in that area. I can assure you, I've seen them myself. I actually use that road quite a bit. They are out patrolling. Unfortunately, bylaw officers are unable to stop motoring public. Bylaw officers can't engage any vehicle that is moving. That has to be done by a community peace officer or a police officer. And typically the enforcement there, of any violation of a moving vehicle can be done under the Traffic Safety Act or of course our Beaumont Traffic Safety Bylaw. Again, our bylaw officers, stationary violations, if you will. It's going to come down to staffing. It's going to come down to having to reallocate staff from our schedule, which is now 7 days a week for municipal enforcement to maintain coverage, to fixed, or we'll call it task force operation style, or task force style operations, where we actually have a dedicated team out enforcing, or at least actively patrolling for trucks that use our roads. And for certain, they are seen. We do receive reports of them. They are reported through our municipal enforcement line. That's what it would take. It's going to come down to staff, and it's going to come down to the fact that when we reallocate those staffs, we may have vacancies on some of those days that we've committed to having staff in station. Again, we've moved to 7 days a week. We did that in May. Which is working very, very well for us, keeping our file load for officers to, and call it an even threshold, if you will. So things aren't busy on Monday, but that's what it will take. So an educational campaign coupled with our communications team, of course, and our friends with the RCMP as well.
Yeah, from experience, the radios in trucks work very fast, and they are very, their memories get a lot better if you can do some upfront work on these jobs. That's just from my experience in the world that I work in during the day. And then I just also wanted to point out that the inevitable truck traffic is going to be coming as we work on the turf field. You know, I would hope that the road use agreement has the trucks going, you know, from the south side of Beaumont north and up and down there, rather than all the way through Beaumont. So, you know, those if we have trucks coming all the way through Beaumont down the hill to get to the you know, to the turn to go into the Jerry Pitsula Park to access where that construction is going to be, that's going to be very challenging for residents. So, you know, I just, you know, while I'm here and while I got you, I'm sorry, that's operational Steve coming through, but you know, south to north is going to be way better than north to south on that. So thank you for that answer. Mayor, second question is around switching gears and to talk about trees. We had a very robust discussion during the Forest Heights subdivision approval about trees, tree removal, tree replacement. The developer was worked with the situation to keep a whole lot open, although it was noted that there was significant grading that had to have been done in Forest Heights that was going to take out trees. And one of the biggest concerns of residents in the area was the presence of trees. There was a commitment to get some trees planted, both on the developer's part because they need to, and both on the city's part because it was an identified problem that was going to be anticipated. So just some comment around the timeline for the tree replacement, knowing that the longer you wait, the more logistically challenging it gets with respect to fencing, with respect to paths, with respect to accessibility and such. If administration could comment on that, please.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Van Newkirk. The landscaping work is scheduled to commence later this summer. As per the landscaping plans, the developer is required to install trees in that area. And the city has also made a commitment to plant trees in the area starting next year for a 2-year period. So the actual number I don't have offhand, but that's the plan for the trees in that area.
Is there any ability to bump up the timeline for more trees sooner? What does that look like, or are we stuck in the current plan?
Well, as you know, we prioritize and plan for multiple years for trees, so that's where it fits into this plan. If we're to move that up, it's going to rob from Peter to pay Paul. So we're going to stick with our plan at this point in time.
Yeah. Okay, I'll leave it at that for tonight. Thank you.
Councillor Danlock.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart. I have 2 questions. I believe Mr. Cook is still available, I hope. I think it's his area. If I could just wait a second in case he can join us back. Thank you, Mr. Cook. I appreciate that. My first question, I've had some concerns from residents regarding our sign bylaw enforcement, specifically talking about those small little signs that are core plastic with the little metal pins that look like election signs, but they're not till this fall anyhow, I guess. But there are businesses around town and from Edmonton who are putting those signs around the various parts of boulevards and streets around Beaumont. So what has been our policy in terms of getting rid of those signs that aren't really illegal by the sounds of it, from what I understand, and how do we encourage the businesses to stop doing that? What has been our experience with that? If you could, Mr. Cook, please. Thank you.
Certainly, thank you. Through your worship, to Councillor Danlock. I believe the majority of that is covered under our land use bylaw, and perhaps our director of current planning, Joanne Darget, can provide further answer to that here in the near future. Typically, that's the enforcement of those areas is on request or complaint. Yes, they are seen on our boulevards. Enforcement does notice them. However, unfortunately, our officers prioritize calls, and traditionally, if they're dealing with a complaint, whether it be a dog at large or a residential complaint, much like the RCMP, which you can call it a priority 1 or priority 2 call, they focus on that. So again, to your point, typically it's on request or complaint. I unfortunately don't have any statistics or know of any recent cases where we've received complaints, but that is something I'm prepared to look into for council, if you choose.
Yes, I would appreciate that. Thank you. My follow-up question, Minister, if I may briefly, involves around a couple of residents who live close to the Champ Vallée School in the south part of Beaumont. They notice in the evenings some questionable activity behind the school late at night. They're wondering if we could have the city request the RCMP to, when they're doing their patrols of the city, to maybe drive by the back of the school and have a little look-see and just see what's going on. If they could just make an effort to do that. Is that something we can ask the RCMP to do, or is that something I should ask the RCMP myself to do, just to be a little more visible in the area, perhaps, to see what could be going on, perhaps?
Certainly, I see the CAO is off mute as well. Mike, were you going to? I'm good with answering this.
Yeah, give them a little bit of the history on this one and be very careful, Councillor Danlock. Go ahead.
Certainly, through your worship to Councillor Danlick, thank you for your question. We are aware of activity behind Champs Valley School in the evening hours. We've been aware of this since, I want to say 2019, perhaps a little bit longer. Working with the RCMP, Municipal Enforcement Protective Services has conducted routine patrols in the area, has worked with the school division, that's the school division of the school, of course, to help address any concerns that have been brought forward. I'm very confident in saying that the activities, unless something new has started, the activities that have taken place in the rear of the school are not unlawful. And that goes back, again, a few years now. And most of the activity focuses on the basketball courts in that area. Again, RCMP and Municipal Enforcement have conducted proactive patrols in the area, have determined there has been no activity to suggest any criminal activity or wrongdoing. And again, I want to assure you, we've even worked with the school division to help eliminate some of the concerns that may be coming forward from residents in the area.
Okay, good. I appreciate that. One last very quick question. Mr. Cook, are you bringing back the CCAN fire training facility you had a couple of summers ago? That was very entertaining. I'd love to do it again. If that's something in the cards for this year, let us know. I'd be happy to be in the cookhouse again one more time. It was awesome. Thank you.
Certainly. Actually, if your worship, if I can make a general comment to council, thank you. Through your worship to council, actually, with the approval of the funding for our fire service training ground, which will be erected at our operations yard along 510, that exact type of container will be built into our facility. So we're going to have it all the time, and that was with council support. So thank you folks for that. I will share with you that RFP is closed. We're negotiating with a contractor right now, and we hope to have that facility open with a grand opening by the end of summer. It'll be our new recruit class 13, which is working through our training program right now, who should be the first to go in to conduct live fire exercises. So to your point, Councillor Danlick, we'd love to have you back.
I'm looking forward to it. I'll make sure I'm clean shaven that morning for the face mask.
Absolutely.
Martin, remember, you got to shave, Martin. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor recognizing we're running a little late tonight. Councillor Hendricks, followed by Councillor Barnhart.
Your worship, thank you. And just maybe back to that comment discussion about trucks. Given the photo radar technology that can pick up the slightest movement of tires at stop signs and all the other things it does with respect to speed, is there technology that says, hey, GVW can't be any more than this on this road? Click, there's a license plate and a bill. I don't know. So that would save us on patrolling and personnel issues, but just thought I'd throw it out there. My question really is on Milu Park. Getting some emails regarding an area that was flooded apparently last year, and that there was going to be some cleanup, some sod. Just checking in on that, see where things are at.
Yeah, as we mentioned in the email, there's some drainage work that's being done in Milu Park, and the landscaping. It's scheduled as part of this summer's work plan. As far as a date, I don't have a date.
Okay, there was an email.
Yeah, we responded to an email that you had sent requesting information.
You sent it to the Lauer family?
No, we sent it to you, sent it to council.
Okay, didn't see it, so I'll look for it. So thank you, appreciate it.
Double check tomorrow morning that we had done that. I swear I saw it, but I could be wrong.
No, that's good. No, but thank you, appreciate it.
I will double check.
Thanks.
Councillor Barnhart.
Thank you. And Councillor Hendricks, thank you for bringing up one of my questions was about Milieu Park as well. But the second one is about the all of the work that's going on the west side. Now, I had a call last week about earth moving and whether contracts had been advertised for that particular area. And, first thing I do is send people to the website to see what projects are going on. But myself, when I went there, the West Recreation site doesn't have an update. It says scheduled for late May. So I wasn't sure if the earth moving was related to Elan and their development, or whether it's related to our West Recreation site. So I wonder if you could clarify, Mr. Schwartz, as to whether both of those projects are happening, and have the earth moving contracts been assigned? Were they publicly advertised? That was basically the question.
Well, all of our work is publicly advertised. We have to abide by our purchasing policy and the rules of the province. As far as the specifics on which earth is being moved, I couldn't tell you. I'd have to find out. The work on the West 80 would have just started this week. So whether they're moving earth or not, I think they are, but certainly that other piece on Elan has been going for much longer. So if I was a betting man, I would say it's Elan, but I'll find out.
Okay, it was my thought that it was Elan as well, but I thought, being this was a Beaumont resident, that if we could get some information about how that information is presented and advertised through APC, I believe.
Absolutely.
Double check before I said anything.
That's exactly where it's advertised for sure.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, having said that, correct me if I'm wrong, Elan would hire their own contractors through their own processes.
That would be my experience.
All right, seeing no further requests to speak, we will move to item 11, CAO's update.
You know, given the length of time, I can do an update by an email rather than take up any more of anybody's time.
Fair enough. Brings us to item 13, notice of motion. Are there any members of council wishing to make a notice of motion? Councillor Stout.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, I have a notice of motion as follows: that council direct administration to bring back a report on the costs and steps required to implement a Kick It to the Curb program in Beaumont.
Okay, have you sent a copy of that to the city clerk?
I will do that right away, although I believe the city clerk is fully advised of my notice of motion.
That's okay. Just want to make sure we have it for the minutes later.
We'll have it.
Thank you. I will accept the notice of motion. Seeing no other hands to speak. Next item 14, closed session. We have no items to go into closed session for this evening, which will bring us to adjournment. It's been a long night. Appreciate everybody hanging in there. We had some good discussions, and I will look forward to seeing everybody once again next week at Committee of the Whole. This meeting is adjourned.